Just wait for the red box. Yep, we are live right now, so members of the public can see the meeting. So I'd like to welcome officers and members to the OVN scrutiny meeting held virtually. Before we start, I'd just like to remind members of a few housekeeping rules. Members are reminded that by being present at the meeting, they are in attendance and the usual rules of conduct apply. Please note that the meeting is being live streamed. Microphones should be on mute at all times unless speaking. And please, when you are speaking, when you do have your video on as well, if there could be a suitable or a blurred background. And just before we do start, just the usual way that we start off, we get councillors, members of the OVN Scrutiny Committee to introduce themselves. And excuse me, sorry. And if we can have our videos off, I, as a chair, would only have my video on. Thank you. So if we can start off by councillors introducing themselves. So I'm Councillor Susan Erbil. I'm the chair of the OVN Scrutiny Committee, as I've said. Now I will just start by introducing committee members. Achilles, would you like, Councillor Georgia, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
But I know it's just the usual practice for members to see who's present at the meeting.
No. Of course. I'll just put my camera on just for a second, just to introduce myself. Yeah. I'm Achilles Georgiou. I'm a councillor for Bowes and also the chair of the Children's Services Scrutiny Panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Achilles. And Councillor Smith.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Edward Smith. I'm a member for Cockfosters Ward and I'm also the chair of the Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Panel.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And Councillor Lee David Sanders.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Lee David Sanders. I'm a councillor for Highlands Ward and I'm the chair of Crime Scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Has Yusuf.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I apologise for my background? I'm afraid this technical issues mean I'm stuck with it for the time being. Anyway, I'm Councillor Has Yusuf from Chase Ward. I'm also the chair of the Environment and Climate Action Scrutiny Panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elif Erbil.
Hi, can everyone see me and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Councillor Elif Erbil and my area of ward is Enfield Lock and I'm also the chair for Housing Scrutiny Panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Busan Demirel.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Birsen Demirel, member for Enfield Lock Ward. I'm also chair of Finance and Performance Scrutiny Panel. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have our Vice Chair, Councillor Margaret Greer. So sorry, Margaret. Yeah.
No, that's fine, Susan. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm Margaret Greer and I am, as Susan said, the Vice Chair of OVN Scrutiny. I'm a member of the Lower Edmonton Ward and I'm also the chair of the Regeneration and Economic Development Scrutiny Panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have had an introduction of all the councillors that are members of the OVN Scrutiny Committee, and now I'd like to ask, there's no apologies because all members are present. Are there any declaration of interest? I assume that is no. So we move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on 15th of September. Are there any comments to be made on this item?
If I may, please, Chair, it's item 10 point Roman numeral 7, and that's, if you recall, I in the meeting I sent an email with a document to everybody. The minute says that the document was not accepted by yourself, although I must admit I don't remember that. You might have said that, I don't recall it. But however, the point which I'd like to raise is that the minute as it reads at the moment is inconsistent with the minute that went to, and the paper, I should say, that went to Cabinet following the scrutiny minutes, following the scrutiny meeting, which in a document from the leader and the programme director for Meridian Water accepted that a document by me had been actually tabled at the OSC meeting. So I think if you leave this minute the way it is, to say that it wasn't accepted is a contradiction to the document that went to Cabinet. So I think it should be 10.7 needs to change somehow to reflect the fact that this document was sent to everybody, and indeed people have opened it and read it and have acted upon it.
Okay, we could note that down for 10.7, but I think if Jeremy, do you want to add on to that, or?
I think, Chair, if you leave that one with me to pick up outside the meeting, and if there is any issue, I will email all members of the committee separately. So if members are minded to accept the minutes subject to me clarifying that point, I think that would be the best way to do it, rather than try and do it by committee, as they say.
Yeah.
That's fine. Can we just at least note that I raised it for this at this meeting then, please?
Yeah, it would be noted in a minute. Yeah.
Chair, if I may, and sorry for speaking, I do believe there is another error in the minutes, and this is not a deliberate error, I assure you. At item 9.7, 9.7, we refer to Councillor Youssef as vice chair of the housing scrutiny panel, and I believe it should be vice chair.
Yes, I was about to comment on that. As you can see, I haven't got any hair, vice or not.
Okay, I think that's just the letter missing, obviously. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jeremy. That is all noted. Okay, so if that's subject to what Jeremy has said, then we could move on to item 4. And that is, so we have, just before we do begin our meeting, we have 2 items, main items on the agenda today, and I aim to aim to even out these timing and allow 1 hour for each item, so it can be a fair way to approach the agenda as well, and it will give enough time for members to question on each item that we do have. So I just wanted to ask, because item 4 is the petition received, if the lead petitioner, who is Mr. Rowland, is he on the call? He was on the call earlier, just to come.
I'm right here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you so much, Roland. So the petition that we have received is, so I'll just read out how it's been, as members and, you know, public that's watching can read as well. Petition for, so the petition is, the subject is petition for all works under the Bowes Primary School and surrounding street quieter neighbourhood plan to be halted until there has been a full consultation with local residents and engagement with Haringey Council and Transport for London. So that's the petition that we have received, and today members would be receiving the petition, and we will be noting the issues that we see or the questions that we have, and as there would be no voting on the petition itself, but it will be either for noting, or if the committee feels that there is to be a recommendation made, you know, for us to make a recommendation as a committee, then it would be. But let's see how the petition item goes ahead, and I would just like to remind that the petition lead has 5 minutes to introduce and to speak about the petition, and then the cabinet member has, so I believe Councillor Ian Barnes is also present, and we have officers, so Officer Doug Wilkinson, who this petition falls under, to have a response time of 10 minutes, and then we'll be moving on to members to ask questions. So I wouldn't be speaking further, but I would move this item on to Roland. If you could please, you have 5 minutes. I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Okay, good evening. My name is Roland Hughes. Thank you for allowing me to present this petition from over 1,600 local residents. I'm going to use these 5 minutes to argue that this LTN needs to be removed immediately for a number of reasons. It does nothing to keep us safe from COVID. It is socially regressive. It adds to pollution and congestion in our wider neighbourhood. It reduces the independence of the vulnerable. It provides disincentives to walk and cycle. Planning our daily lives has become a lottery as we are dependent on one entry-exit stretch of the most congested road in the country. For carers, tradespeople, delivery drivers, and many others in our community, car use is vital, not just a lifestyle choice. We are a very residential mixed community. 40% of us are BAME. It is a quiet neighbourhood traffic-wise, with a couple of exceptions around which this scheme is devised. These two roads, Brownlow and Warwick, provide a key north to south links across Haringey and Enfield. Otherwise, we are totally bounded by the North Circular and Bounds Green Road. We have no facilities locally for essentials other than a few convenience stores and fast food shops, hardly ideal for healthy diets or reducing obesity. We use high streets in Muswell Hill, Southgate, Wood Green and Palmer's Green for the essentials of life, all of which necessitate round trips which previously ranged from 5.2 to 6.8 kilometres. These areas represent the true extent of our neighbourhood. We shop in Asda in Southgate or Marks in Muswell Hill, go to the dentist or place of worship in Wood Green, and so on. Walking or cycling around Bowes takes us nowhere, but instead entraps us in a rather sad version of the Truman Show. Nor do we have the benefit of an integrated cycle network. Instead, we must negotiate busy, hilly thoroughfares with parked cars and potholed roads, now made worse by displaced traffic. These roads have become even more dangerous and unpleasant for walkers and cyclists as a result. After more than a month of this scheme being operational, the level of displaced traffic is such that Haringey are planning their own LTN, which is an indictment of our scheme in itself. If their LTN goes ahead, our local journeys become more horrendous, and as more traffic will be funneled onto even fewer roads. We are increasingly being imprisoned within our own neighbourhood. Let's now examine a bit more closely the disbenefits of this scheme. 1. Access for emergency services is via a very congested part of the North Circular or Bounds Green Road, both of which are regularly gridlocked and sometimes closed and flooded. 2. There are many new high-density housing developments on this narrow stretch of the North Circular. This scheme will not lower the pollution generated by constant congestion and idling cars. However marginal the impact of our LTN, it gives a message that certain lives do not matter. 3. Bowes School Infant Playground faces directly onto the North Circular, the wall of which is just 3.3 metres from the carriageway. How does this scheme help the health and well-being of our children? 4. The Metropolitan Police has pointed out to the council that dead-end streets may encourage scooter and pedestrian crime as police cars have less easy access. Such incidents have already happened. Walking home from the tube on dark winter nights becomes a riskier affair. 5. The disabled, elderly and vulnerable face greater barriers to receiving home deliveries for essential supplies, visits from carers and health workers and relatives. The fallback defence of LTN advocates is always pollution reduction, but this assertion needs to be backed by robust empirical evidence. We would have expected to see by now some hard data that sets out the tangible benefits of the scheme, as well as a methodology that shows how before and after positions are to be measured. Any future collection of data must focus on the areas surrounding our scheme that are affected by the displacement, not our newly created dead-end roads. Why would reducing traffic in our neighbourhood be deemed a success if our daily lives are so detrimentally affected? The council needs to start again and try to understand how our daily lives work and what determines our mode of travel. We need a joined-up solution to traffic problems involving TfL and Haringey. In conclusion, the traffic misfortunes of Warwick Road residents have been used to justify a far-reaching scheme that has caused unnecessary friction in the community. It benefits a vocal minority at the expense of the rest of us. To quote Councillor Barnes, it is the job of the council to represent the best interests of all its residents. Quieter neighbourhoods are not the same as LTNs. We did not vote in Labour for car reduction schemes that undermine our lives and livelihoods. Winning all our hearts and minds is essential if this council wants to maintain the support and confidence of its communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you for putting your brief for the petition. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to give Councillor Barnes the chance to respond. Councillor Barnes, you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well and staying safe. I'm going to try not to take up the full 10 minutes with this, but what I'd like to do is break down my response to the petition and into the following sections, if I may. A quick reminder of how this Bowes low traffic neighbourhood works and how it came about, the petition itself, the organisation behind the petition, and finally a summary and details of a consultation going forward. So in very simple terms, a low traffic neighbourhood, or LTN, works by filtering the ends of certain roads in an area to stop rat runners crisscrossing that area, in the hope that this ultimately encourages drivers out of their cars onto foot, cycle or public transport for short journeys. The filters for a trial like this take the shape of planters that continue to allow pedestrians or cycles through, or camera enforced filters that are requested by the emergency services so they can drive through unimpeded. Bowes is an area that's been plagued with through traffic for a long time, mainly due to tens of thousands of vehicles a week cutting off a huge corner of the North Circular Road. For the last 10 years, phone apps such as Waze have increasingly directed vehicles away from main roads and through residential neighbourhoods that shouldn't be used as a pressure valve because there are too many vehicles on our roads. In response to concerns about traffic in Bowes, ward councillors Brett, Councillor Georgiou, who's with us tonight, and Councillor Chiba have lobbied for a solution for many, many years. Our MP Bambos Charalambos presented a petition to Parliament in 2018 calling for bold action from Enfield Council on this issue. It's worth noting that 40% of Bowes residents don't own a car, often the less well-off families, and yet they're made to suffer awful air quality from this through traffic. Bowes is also well served with public transport, having several bus services and even a Piccadilly line tube station. Low traffic neighbourhoods in London, particularly in Waltham Forest, have been successful in encouraging people to think twice about their short cart journeys. 35% of journeys in London are under 2 kilometres, which is about a 15-minute walk. We'd like drivers who are able to consider walking or cycling, consolidating car trips, car sharing with other car owning family members, and travelling at non-peak times, or simply not making the journey at all. This should lead to traffic evaporation and has been documented in several reports by various traffic experts. These schemes do take time to bed in and for behavioural change to take place, and this ultimately leads to cleaner air, improved safety on roads, helps to fight obesity and ultimately climate change. 39% of our borough's emissions being from our roads. Low traffic neighbourhoods are a policy of this administration and now official government policy. I'm highly critical of this government, but on this particular issue, it's 100% correct. And indeed, the government funded this Bowes LTN with its Emergency Active Travel Fund. The government gave us only 8 weeks to implement this LTN, otherwise funding would be clawed back and we would jeopardise our chances of further funding in the next round, which may be significantly larger. This would be hugely beneficial for the entire borough, and one of our next LTNs moves into Edmonton and the East. 8 weeks is an incredibly short time to design a scheme, liaise with ward councillors, our MP, Haringey and the emergency services, and then order the filters and implement the scheme as a live trial with full consultation. But the government's haste is aimed at offering increased space to pedestrians and cyclists during COVID, including those who have taken to cycling or walking during the lockdown. I believe the government is right to aim for a green recovery following the damaging effects of this virus, which is now in its second wave. So just moving on to the petition itself, I was disappointed when I first saw the petition flyer because I immediately recognised that it would scare residents in Bowes and leave them confused and fearful. It contained misinformation, and I'm just going to give 3 examples. The first one, to quote, Enfield Council is planning to seal off the local access roads between the Bowes area and the Bounds Green Road. Now, this induced the most panic. I had residents contacting me worried that both ends of their roads were to be sealed off, meaning they couldn't enter with their car at all. Nothing has been sealed off. As described, filters have been added in various locations and all roads are fully accessible. Second example, to quote, York Road, Upper Maidstone Road and Warwick Road will be closed to cars heading to and from Bounds Green Road. Again, this unnecessarily worried residents because any vehicle can still reach Bounds Green Road via different routes. And the final example, the aim of this petition is to halt the proposed works until the council have engaged with the local community, TfL and Haringey Council. As previously mentioned, there's been engagement with residents over many years on the traffic issues through ward councillors, petitions, a perception survey, and a COVID-19 street space online consultation, all of which have identified through traffic as a serious problem in Bowes. And we just cannot install a scheme like this without first engaging with TfL, Haringey and the emergency services, which we did extensively. We now have a 6 months live consultation, and I hope that all residents will feed back to the council, positive or negative, as this will help inform amendments and the ultimate fate of the scheme. And I've contacted several groups in the area to arrange a virtual meeting so that I can personally receive feedback once the scheme has had a chance to bed in. So just turning to the organisation behind the petition, Mr. Hughes is a member of it, the Broomfield Homeowners and Residents Association. It's known as Bhora. So this is a residents association that has a section on their website under local campaigns called Too Much Traffic. So they do recognise there's been a problem for a long time. And it should be noted that Bhora's own 2019 survey of members' interests highlighted extensive traffic and the environment as one of the top categories of concern. So this petition appears to be in direct odds with their own survey. Bhora usually has an AGM in May or June, but this year sidestepped having a virtual AGM, which has angered members because, like any residents association, naturally there are some for this scheme and there are others against. I've been contacted by members of Bhora who are furious about the failure to engage with its membership before adopting this anti-LTN position. It's now become apparent as well that the Bhora committee has chosen to exclude a number of members who support the LTN from their round robin email updates. And I was approached yesterday by 19 members of Bhora who sent me an email. They asked Mr. Hughes as well, I believe, to read this out, but he's chosen not to tonight. In their statement, the 19 members expressed their support for a trial and to quote, "We are already seeing real positive change, greatly reduced traffic levels, safer streets for school runs, cleaner air, much less noise, vastly more cycling, lower stress levels and less road rage." They state that a course more befitting to a residents' association would have been to develop a balanced subcommittee to look at the pros and cons of such an important issue as provided for in the Bhora Constitution, to consult members and to represent the full range of views. We hope that the association will move quickly to return to a balanced and responsible position, sensitive to the diversity of views on the subject. So finally, Chair, just to summarise, it was unfortunate that the petition scared and worried the residents of Bowes, and disappointing that not once does the petition mention the potential benefits for the area of increased safety for pedestrians, particularly during COVID, improved air quality, obesity, and a positive contribution to our fight against climate change. I made a video to try to counter the misinformation, and of course I continue to provide accurate information in the replies to the many emails I receive from residents. There are just over 1,500 signatures in the petition out of a population of 7,200 people in this low traffic neighbourhood, sometimes 4 or 5 signatures from the same household. And sadly, there are many signatures from roads that have already been filtered from through traffic in recent years, like Evesham, Hardwick and Stanley. These roads already benefit from a life free from rat running, and it's hard to understand why they seek to deny other roads in their community the same benefit. And then there are signatures in the petition from as far afield as Highlands. If a traffic scheme in Highlands was halted because of an objection from someone in Bowes, then I would assume that local ward councillors would rightly be up in arms. But given all of this, we absolutely do recognise that all residents of Bowes deserve to have their voice heard, and that is why we have a live 6-month consultation which will allow people to suggest amendments and to help shape a scheme that works for all residents in the area. Evidence suggests that LTNs need 3 to 6 months to bed in to begin to see driver behavioural change happening, particularly on the perimeter roads.
30 seconds, Councillor Barnes.
I recognise that no one likes change, but when 1 in 20 deaths in Enfield are connected to air pollution, obesity in children is a significant issue, and 39% of our greenhouse gases are from our roads, then we must act. And in Bowes, this happens to be under government guidance and government funding. If we don't, then we're just kicking the traffic problems and health issues onto future generations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Thank you for the, you know, how do I say, in-depth provided by yourselves. Okay, just before we do move on to members, I have a few questions as chair before I do open it up to members. And the question that actually, Councillor Barnes, you kind of picked up on about the signatures. I understand there has been, just to reiterate on the signatures, that approximately 1,587 signatures, and of them being 1,562 verified signatures. It's just the petition was the petition open to all residents of Enfield, or were most of the signatures received from Bowes? I heard you did mention that there was signatures received from Highlands, and I'm just curious on to how who reacted to the petition and what the areas were that actually signed the petition, because it is quite important to know who is signing. That's one of my questions. And just another question on consultation. So there is a 6-month live consultation which you mentioned, but I understand there was an 8-week period to implement it due to government funding, and you know, quick action had to be taken, which I understand. But within that 8 weeks, was what consultations were made? Could you specify on that, if that's? And they're my 2 questions, Councillor Barnes.
Okay, Chair.
Thank you.
No problem at all. So, yeah, I find it, I do find it unusual that a petition like this is open to all of the residents of Enfield, because, as I say, the majority of the vast majority of the signatures in the petition are from Bowes and Southgate Green, which are involved in the low traffic neighbourhood. But signatures have been allowed from, like I say, as far afield as Highlands and also Palmer's Green. Now, you know, you could argue that a local changes to roads, you know, why should someone in Highlands, you know, be able to have a say in that? But that's a debate for a different day, really. So, as I say, the vast majority are from the area, Chair. Your second question was about engagement. So it's an incredibly short amount of time, 8 weeks. We didn't have time for a consultation. That's why we have gone for a live consultation, which will happen, which is open now, Chair. So anybody is free to enter any thoughts they have into that. The officers, just to give you a comparison, this was installed in 8 weeks. I mean, the officers were literally working around the clock. We have another low traffic neighbourhood in Enfield that has taken 8 to 9 months to install. So, you know, the fact that we had to plan it, install it, engage with stakeholders meant that we weren't able to have the engagement we'd like. But like I say, there's a clear history of engagement. We did a perception survey that very much strongly dictated that there are very bad traffic issues in the area with regards to rat runners and through traffic. And we did a COVID street map where people could pin their thoughts across the whole borough, really, about where, you know, they think social distancing really needs to be concentrated. And of course, like I said, you know, Bowes councillors have been engaged for many, many years on this issue. And the MP took a petition to Parliament, you know, so, there's been a huge amount of engagement, and we hope that will continue with this live consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. From what I understand, that, you know, previous engagement has fed into the LTN in Bowes. Doug, did you have anything to add on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just for the benefit of everybody, Doug Wilkinson, Director of Environment. It was just to add to that sort of 8-week period of engagement. It was mentioned in the petition about engaging with emergency services and Haringey and TfL. Of course, there's a statutory obligation for us to consult with emergency services when we put traffic schemes in. So within that 8-week period, notwithstanding previous conversations over many years that Councillor Barnes alludes to around traffic issues in the area, in that 8-week period, we were consulting with the emergency services to talk through what the design might look like, how it would work for them. We also engaged with Haringey Council, and that was with both elected members, the ward members, bordering on boards, and also the technical officers within Haringey Council, so that we could understand the impacts, because clearly it's not just about boards when we manage the traffic network. So there was a lot of engagement with Haringey, both at a political level and an officer technical level, and also again mentioned in the petition with TfL. You know, anything we do within our traffic network, our road network, we always have to engage with TfL, because there is impacts, there's broader impacts, and equally we've got a really good relationship with TfL, and it works well to understand what we're doing, what we're proposing to do, and how that impacts on them, and have they got any plans that may impact on us too. So it was just really to support the information that Councillor Barnes as mentioned earlier in his statement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Doug. Just touching on that, about the emergency services, there is a statutory obligation. You said, what was the response? If you can, I understand there has been engagement with other Haringey Council. You said the technical team and emergency services, TfL. What is the general? If you can briefly just touch upon the brief responses that you received, because I think it's quite important for the members to know, and the committee to know what the general feel was to the LTN.
Yeah.
Sorry, Doug. Thank you.
So can I say something? I don't know, Doug, whether you want to reply to that, or Richard, but this is slightly tangential to your question, Chair, but I know a lot of people have been concerned about emergency services, and there's genuine concern. People want to feel safe, but there's been a certain amount of weaponization of the emergency services, which has been really unpleasant. And I think it firstly shows a lack of faith in the emergency services themselves to actually somehow tolerate a scheme that we've implemented that would endanger life. And I think secondly, it also shows a lack of faith in our officers, that somehow, the suggestions that they would try to hoodwink the emergency services, or, so I'm not trying to imply in any way that you're suggesting that, Chair, but, that has been going around and around, and just one more thing before I hand over. I think it's really important to say that the Chief Operating Officer of the London Ambulance Service, Kadir Mia, publicly stated on the 29th of September, we are not aware of any LTNs that have led to any patient safety concerns or any significant delays, So, for the head of the ambulance service to come out and say that, I think is a really, it's a big statement to make. Obviously, they will continue to monitor the situation, and we will continue to listen to the emergency services, because obviously that's what we do. For a bit more detail, so I'll hand over to yourself, Doug, or to Richard.
I'll pick up a little bit, Councillor Barnes, if I may, and then I think Richard is probably a good person to give you just that exact detail relating to our engagement with the emergency services. But I think Councillor Barnes makes a good point, highlighting the London-wide approach from the London Ambulance Service there, and I think that's very useful for us to understand. And I think it's very helpful. And what that does is that helps us understand that the engagement that we have with the emergency services is part of the design. So they sit down with our officers and they look at the street layout and work out, and they understand the direction of travel across the whole of London with regards to trying to reduce the number of private car journeys on the cities roads, not just Enfields, not just Bores, but the cities. So they understand the direction of travel, and they're prepared and want to work with London boroughs to make it work for them too. So it's really helpful, the engagement that we have with them to design the layout, and that's where we come to agree, where we have the modal filters in streets, and where we have those points which emergency vehicles can pass through. And that's part of the process. If I hand you over, Chair, to Richard, he can probably answer the original question you asked around what was their initial response, or what was their response.
Okay, thank you very much, Doug. Richard, yeah, thank you very much. If you could just.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my name's Richard Easton. I'm the Healthy Streets Programme Director. I mean, I don't want to add too much more, because I think it's been covered. But there is a design process that we go through. So when we start to develop a scheme, we share that with the emergency services. There is a process of iteration. So it may be that on our first cut, they do have concerns, and they will raise those with us, and then that's part of the dialogue to then evolve the design to respond to those. Particularly with the London Ambulance Service, the scheme has reduced the width restriction on Warwick Road, which has been a sort of concern previously for the London Ambulance Service. So they haven't previously been able to pass directly through Warwick Road, and that's because the London Ambulance Service and the police have made a similar sort of London-wide operational decision that they don't carry keys for those type of closures. They prefer to understand what are the clear strategic routes that they need to use, and then they use those. So we're working really collaboratively with them, and their feedback as to where they want to be able to continue to pass through, and where therefore we may need to include closures on those routes. Then we take the approach at their request of using the camera controlled closures. So yeah, in summary, it's an iterative process. We've got a very constructive relationship with the emergency services, and the way that it ultimately works at the end of that discussion, do the emergency services have any objections? And if they don't have any objections, they don't raise those objections with us, and then we can proceed to implementation. And that's the case for this scheme.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you for answering my questions. My question wasn't to, I didn't aim to, it wasn't related to what's been, I understand there has been a discussion all over, but I did not mean to weaponize or anything. So apologies if it did come across like that.
No,
Sorry.
it didn't, Chair. No, it didn't, Chair. Apologies. I did not mean to imply that whatsoever.
Okay. No, I understood. Don't worry, it's fine. Okay, so that's the questions that I had, and if we can move on to members, if members can indicate that the members that want to speak, if they can indicate themselves, please.
Chair is Councillor Has Yusuf.
Okay, thank you, Has. Edward Smith and Achilles, yeah. Okay, if we can start with Has, if you can take on and ask a question, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, when is the deadline for this 6-month consultation? Because I think it'll be a really good idea to actually make a really sort of robust, sort of campaign to get as many opinions as possible from the whole wider sort of community. Because as we know, petitions are they're a democratic right, to people. So I think that was a good idea. It just gives you a sort of an understanding of what local residents think. So at the very least, they should be noted by the council, which I'm sure it has been. Can I just also ask, has there any been consideration to the use of electric cars in the future to these pollution problems that we're going to have? Because that would presumably make things a lot better. I know it's going to take quite a few years before we actually get sort of carbon-free roads. But has that been considered at all? But really, I just think there seems to be a lack of maybe a bit of communication here. So I think if we make a robust sort of effort to get the opinions of the wider community there, I think that'd be great. So thank you.
May I respond?
Yes, you can, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Youssef. Really good questions. So deadline for the consultation, I'll let Richard bring that up in a minute, if I may. He'll have the exact date that's needed. I agree. We absolutely need to get as big a response as we can across the LTN area. Like I say, there are 7,200 residents in this low traffic neighbourhood. I'd love every one of them to have a say about the low traffic neighbourhood and the way that they're interacting with it, the way that they feel about it, you know, whether any changes should be made. As I mentioned in my opening speech, as well as the consultation, I am currently booking personal Zoom virtual meetings with different groups in the area, some for, some against, some who are right in the middle. So, you know, I hope that I will get a wide range of opinions from those groups as well. And I want them to be brutally honest about the schemes and to tell us what's working, what's not working. But going back to as well to my opening statement, you know, I hope that Bhora engage with their wider membership group, and somehow I would love to see a committee put together within Bhora, the Bhora Residents Association, who presented this petition, so that they can have a balance of opinions within that committee, you know, not just outright LTN, you know, a balance of opinions so everyone can have their say, which I think is exactly what Councillor Youssef is alluding to. If I could just move on to Councillor Youssef's second question. That's concerning electric vehicles. I know that Councillor Youssef is extremely environmentally minded, as am I, as are several members. Electric vehicles, that is another prong of our attack, really. What we are introducing by March next year, we're going to introduce our first lamppost charging trial. So this will be the ability for electric vehicles to plug into lampposts in order to charge their cars. So we would like to introduce that across a couple of areas. I favour both because I think it would go hand in hand with the low traffic neighbourhoods. So that's certainly something that we have funds for, and I'd look into, and I would like us to pursue that, and hopefully it will be in by March next year. The lamppost charging is something that I think is probably part of the future, because, you know, I do worry that these charging posts, if we put them on streets, they're going to take up valuable space on our streets. So, you know, just a plug socket in a lamppost will allow vehicles to plug in, charge, and then, you know, in the future, if there are electric filling stations, then we can remove that socket and very easily do that. I think that what we have to realise, though, is that electric vehicles are low emission, but there are still particulates, very damaging particulates that can be inhaled from the brakes, from the tyres. There are also environmental considerations concerning the enormous batteries that these electric vehicles have. So, you know, it definitely is the future, and it's the way we need to go. And the government has recognised this because they've put in a ban on the sale of internal combustion engines that will come into effect in 2035. But my worry with that is that, you know, if you buy a car in 2034, you'll be able to use it for the next 10 years. So, you know, it is positive action from the government. They are becoming greener, which is great to see. And yes, I think that's answered Councillor Youssef's question. I don't know whether Doug or Richard's got anything to add to that. I think that's probably quite extensive.
Okay, if Doug or Richard, if you have anything to add, thank you.
I'll be very brief, Chair. It was just to follow up around the electric vehicles and charging points. I think Councillor Barnes has given the detail on that, but I think it's important to understand that electric vehicles are part of the solution. They're not all of the solution. Ultimately, across London, we need to reduce the number of vehicles on the roads to reduce congestion, so that public transport becomes much more efficient. So it helps us on that journey, but they're not the only solution for the challenges that London and Enfield face. I think Richard can probably add a little bit more, and certainly can answer the question on when the consultation, when the experimental period ends.
Yeah, I'll just focus on that bit. So we put the scheme in, I think was fully implemented on the 11th of September. So we're really looking at March for that 6 months period. It's an experimental period, so it could be that if the trial is amended in the before that time, then that window can move around, because the idea is that you have a period of stability with what the measures that you've got in place, but there is the opportunity to adjust the trial, but that would then influence how long the consultation might run for. I will just add that we're really keen to hear a whole range of different voices. We're going much beyond the statutory requirement for the consultation period. We are promoting that opportunity. We've developed a project page where there's lots of information and making a really readily accessible way that people can feed back their concerns. And within that consultation as well, we've also asked for people's views and feedback on who may agree and support the aims of the project, but may have an idea of a different way of going about it. And it's important that we hear those ideas as well. And indeed, people I can see are already uploading different ideas that we can review. So we will encourage everyone to get involved in that consultation, and we'll continue to promote it. And if people have got ideas of ways that we can do that and increase the level of engagement throughout this period, then we'll absolutely listen to those ideas.
Thank you, Richard. Did Councillor Youssef, did that answer all your questions?
Yes, thank you. Another one would be if after consultation it becomes really, really negative, what do we do then?
I think that could maybe feed in from Councillor Edward Smith's questions, because we're quite time constrained, so we should move on. But Councillor Barnes, you could pick up on that question whilst you're answering back to Councillor Smith's. Councillor Edward Smith, if you could put your questions out, if there are a few, if you can give them back to back, and then I assume Councillor Barnes would be more than happy to answer them in one go. Would that be okay?
Yes, no, I prefer to do that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank
I think it is a pity, however, and we've said this before, we now have 10 minutes really to actually ask questions. We've had, I know, questions from Councillor Youssef, but we've almost run out of time, and that is not really good enough for such an important issue. Anyway, moving on.
You know, as a committee, we are always, open to extend for, a 10 to 15 minutes. So as long as we do put our questions as the committee members, just be ensured that no one would be cut off from their questioning. Okay.
Okay, I do appreciate that, Chair. Thank you. I'm sure that's the right decision. I mean, my first question really is about the principle behind this. I think it's deplorable, really, to have heard from Councillor Barnes that he has criticised the people who brought this petition. 1,600 people have said they're deeply unhappy with this particular consultation process, and I don't think it's right in any shape or form for a council to just dismiss that as these people being some sort of minority interest, or that they haven't followed their own internal processes, or they don't represent the people of Bowes as a whole. So I just wanted to make that comment first. In terms of the principle of this, and this is where I come to my question, if I may, there seems to be no attempt to have considered the trade-off between mobility and the problems, which we all understand, obviously, of intense traffic through suburban roads. The reality is that there are lots of people, old people, young mothers, people who need to go shopping, people who need to go to local shopping centres, which may be 2 or 3 miles away, who won't be able to aren't able to walk, aren't able to use a bike, and might struggle with a bus. In creating this sort of draconian approach, could he inform us whether he is, has any sympathy with that point of view, with the residents who will struggle, because of the various obstacles that he has placed around the streets of Bowes, and the huge nuisance and worry and concern that all of that will have created. So that's the first question, and it leads it leads into the second question. We are now in a consultation process, a very unusual one in the sense that the residents are being consulted after the first phase of the works have been completed. Leaving that aside, we are now in a consultation process. Will he take any account, because the likelihood is that there will be plenty of opposition to what has occurred, and plenty of opposition to phase 2, because there is a second part to this where more roads will be closed off. How is he going to actually respond to this consultation and assuage some of the mobility problems that I've referred to, if he doesn't actually, is not in any way sympathetic to them? Will the consultation basically be a charade to which he will then dismiss when it is completed? And my third question is about the emergency services. It's a complex situation. Could somebody, an officer or Councillor Barnes, tell me whether the ambulance service and the police service have agreed strategic routes through this particular area to allow them to access houses if there is an emergency? Because that's the key thing. They don't carry FB keys, as people have said, so they need to have been told, and they need to agree what the routes of access are. Has that actually occurred yet? So there are my 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. If we could move on to the responses, Councillor Barnes. Thank you. You're on mute. Yeah, now.
Sorry, I was just trying to get off. First of all, I'd like to take issue with Councillor Smith's completely unfair comments concerning the fact that he accuses me of dismissing the petition. Far from it. I haven't dismissed the petition. What I've said is that the petition is based on misinformation, and it has scared the residents of Bowes. It's worried the residents of Bowes. I responded to that with a video. What I would have liked to have seen is a petition that had all the arguments in it, the pros, the cons, allow people to make up their own minds. And this would have stemmed, as I've said, from a Bhora committee that had a balanced representation of people for it, people against it. What Bhora have done is taken an anti-LTN, anti-low traffic neighbourhood stance from the outset. They've projected that onto their petition and they've sent it out into the world. So, yeah, frankly, I haven't dismissed it whatsoever. All I've said is I would like people to look at the facts, look at the information, you know, try to make up their own minds, and then please take part in our consultation, which is open for the next 6 months. On the second issue, so the second question was concerning mobility. Of course, we recognise that some people have to use their car. I mean, without doubt, we talk to people on email. I've talked to people on the phone who have to use their car. What I've tried to impress on them, though, is that ultimately our hope, and I'm going to allow Richard to just talk about the EQIA in a minute, the equality assessment. But what our hope is that if we can persuade the people who are able-bodied to, you know, like I've said, walk, cycle, consolidate trips, then hopefully that will allow clearer roads for the people who have to use their car, you know, the disabled or whoever it may be. That is our ultimate aim, because mark my words, there are 119,000 cars in Enfield. There are 24,000 cars coming in the next 2 decades. If you think it's congested now, you ain't seen nothing yet. What's coming ahead of us is going to be complete gridlock. I was looking at the figures this afternoon as well. In 1970, there were 13 million cars in the UK. In 2020, there are 40 million cars. You know, our streets are filling up with cars. They are overflowing from main roads into residential areas, causing a danger to pedestrians in residential areas where there are less crossings, there are more blind bends. So consequently, what I'm saying is this reduction in small journeys, 2 kilometres or less, which can take 15 minutes to walk, it's not going to not just going to benefit everybody with regards to air quality, climate change. It's also going to benefit. It's also going to benefit those people who have to use their cars, because we're trying to free up the roads for them in the future. So that's that. I'll let Richard talk about the EQIA if I may in a minute, Chair. But I'll just finish the final point from Councillor Smith. which Richard will want to pick up on as well, I'm sure, the emergency service and agreed routes. Yes, we did. We agreed routes with the emergency services, which meant that they would have unhindered passage on particular strategic routes that they thought were important for them to access areas. So, you know, within the Bowes area, that was Warwick Road. So Warwick Road, the entrance there, instead of using planters and a bollard, which is what we've used on the other roads, to filter the road so only cyclists and pedestrians can go through, what we've done is put in a camera at great expense so that the ambulance service can drive straight through that camera. All emergency services can drive through that camera. So, you know, that we will comply with emergency services requests because we would be foolish not to, you know, so that camera has been put in place for that reason. I'll allow Richard just to pick up, if I may, on the EQIA and maybe just to talk a little bit more about the emergency service agreement with regards to strategic routes, if I may.
Yep.
Thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Chair. I'll be very brief. Yeah, we've published an equalities impact assessment that's on the project page. The equalities impact assessment is a dynamic process. We've got to continue to consider the impacts on people with the protected characteristics, and as part of the consultation, we're asking specific questions so that people can articulate, you know, how they feel the scheme is impacting them. In terms of the emergency services, yeah, just as Councillor Barnes has said, I personally spoke with both the police and the London Ambulance Service about the strategic routes, and that's been discussed with them, and they've agreed the routes that we've settled on.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. And I think Edward, did that answer your questions briefly, or to an extent that you would say?
Well, it answered my questions to an extent, so I'm grateful for that. I just want to put to bed one particular thing that keeps on being mentioned about the residents not being fully informed of the proposals, and therefore they were scared by the wording of the petition. I think the council did put out on the 28th of September what is in fact an extremely clear explanation of what the proposals are and what was going to happen with an attached map. So residents only had to look at the council letter on the subject to find out, you know, what was involved. So I don't think you can argue that the residents have been misled by the petition. Thank you.
If I could respond to that quickly, Chair. If only
Very
residents,
briefly, thank you.
if it's 30 seconds, if only residents would look at all of our communication, I would be hugely relieved, but unfortunately they don't. So, you know, with regards to that issue, it's a bit of a moot point.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes, and thank you, Councillor Smith. Now we have Councillor Achilles Giorgio, who would like to put his questions forward. Thank you, Achilles. If we can do the same way as how Edward has, it'll kind of make, you know, ease the procedure. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. As people may know, I am one of the councillors for Bowes, and indeed trying to relieve the problems that we have in Warwick Road and Brownlow Road has been a very difficult issue, and various things have been spoken about and tried. We now have this scheme. I don't know if it's the right scheme. People have an opportunity to put forward their views in terms of whether the scheme stays as it is, whether it's amended in some way or other, or indeed is done away with completely, because I think there are three options there. The three options are there. Certainly, I'd agree with what Ian is saying. We do need to see a change in terms of modal traffic and in the way move around. And I was very happy in previously to support the Mini Holland scheme where we introduced cycle lanes and so on. And long may we introduce them, and long may people actually use them. I don't think we should get het up about number of people who have signed particular petitions or not. The fact is, you know, 1,500 plus people have signed this petition. The fact that some of them do not live in Bowes, I think we should say, OK, fine. You know, there may be good reason for someone who lives in Highlands to actually visit Bowes. They may have a parent there, they may have someone that they're caring for there. So they should have a right to sign a petition and indeed for us to hear their views. And because if we get into numbers, then you get into the whole issue, you know, when the perception survey was done in March, you know, 263 people responded to this, whereas now we've got 1,500 plus. I don't think we should get het up into that. It is important that we have a consultation. And I think that if we had had a pre-installation consultation, if that had been possible for phase 1, then a lot of the problems that we're seeing now in terms of how some members of Bowes or some people living in Bowes feel about this would have been overcome. I understand that we were on a short time frame, that the council was on a short time frame that was dictated to by government, and there is an opportunity now for people to have their views, and I hope people do put forward their views. But as Edward Smith said, there are 2 phases to this scheme. Phase 1, £100,000 came from government, and that has been implemented, and there is this consultation for 6 months. There is a phase 2. We don't know whether phase 2 will be funded yet, but the plans are there for phase 2. And I think there is a good opportunity for pre-installation consultation on phase 2. And in part I do believe that's taking place with the current questionnaire. It asks people about what they believe about a bus gate in Brownlow Road. I think it should go further. It should ask people about their views on a possible closure between Goring Road and Westbury. I think that's important, and people need to be heard about that. I think just on the consultation, just keeping on the consultation, one of my concerns, and I've raised this with officers, is how are we consulting with people who are not able, don't have access to online media? How are we consulting people such as blue badge holders? There are a number of blue badge holders in the area. We need to get to them. How are we consulting with people who are carers or who need to be cared for, I should say? And what is the impact upon them? So I think we need all this consultation. Sorry. So I think we
Councillor Gray, if you can turn off your camera, thank you.
I think so. I think that's vitally important in terms of how we hear, how we reach out to people who are not online, and how we do that. And it would be interesting to hear from Richard in terms of how that might be happening. I think also just on the emergency services, and by no means do I wish to weaponize this in any way whatsoever, but I do think some possible myths need to be dispelled, and so hence why I'm raising them. I think one of the points that keeps making the social media and is going around is that the ambulance service doesn't carry keys, and whether that is a detriment to and what the impact that is in terms of the emergency services. The ambulance services trying to reach people via closed roads, and two roads are closed off, York and Maidstone. What does that mean? There is also letters going around which say that there was correspondence earlier on with the ambulance service in Edmonton, where they raised some objections to the emergency services, the ambulance service, the Edmonton group manager being able to access some of these areas. So I think that'll be useful to just to clear it up. I think likewise with the police, earlier on there was correspondence from the designing out crime officer, which made the point that about road closures such as these the impact could be on crime, which I think is again worth just dispelling those if that's the case. So, and that's why I raised them, so we can't just get them out of the way. I think going forward, I think for me it's how the scheme is evaluated, and I'm not clear from what I have seen how the scheme will be evaluated, because while on the website and in the questionnaire that's been put forward, it says that we looked at in terms of number of traffic and so on, and what the impact is, and the pollution levels and so on. What we don't have, and the impact on neighbouring roads, what we don't have are any figures. No figures have been set. Targets have been set to say the level of traffic within phase one, the roads in phase one will go down by X. The level of pollution in phase one area will go by X. And for me, having targets, having data, having figures is very important in deciding in 6 months' time what the council will do. And unless you've actually set those targets, then how do you know what you're going to do? And in keeping with that, I think what's very important is that what is the level of traffic in the neighbouring roads? Because what we are seeing is that the scheme is pushing traffic onto the North Circular Road. We are seeing more traffic in such as Bounds Green Road.
Akis, I think just to be sorry to interrupt. It's just to be a bit more specific on the questions, because I think it's for it to be easier for response as well. Because I understand there is a lot of as of course as a ward councillor, which you would have more interest, but it's just to be a bit more specific on the question, to be a bit more helpful. Thank you.
Fine. Okay. So well, I'll go back to the question I just asked. Is what are the measures that are being put into place that will help decide what the next step will be? And for me, that's about the level of pollution that we're likely to be seeing, that we could be seeing on the North Circular Road, on Brownlow Road, in Bounds Green Road, in Durnsford Road, in Nightingale, and those latter are in Haringey, but there is an impact there, and we are seeing increased traffic there. One of the arguments has been is that there will be car evaporation. I think, well, what are the figures that will tell us whether there is car evaporation or not, and where that's happening? And I think finally, if phase two funding doesn't happen, then what will the council do? Because it's quite likely that the situation in Brownlow Road, the number of cars in Brownlow Road will increase unless there is some level of mitigation that is put in for Brownlow Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Giorgio. Just to say the hour has passed for this item, and I propose that we extend it for 10 minutes because there are members that wish to ask questions, and to be fair on them, I'd like to extend for 10 minutes. If that's agreed, can members say agreed, please? Thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes, if I can pass on to you.
Yeah,
I know it was quite
sure.
intensive.
It was. Yeah, I'm not sure where the questions were in there, but so I mean, first of all, it's slightly strange because Councillor Giorgio has been part of this implementation. He's been to all the meetings. We've had chats. We've talked about it over and over. There are some questions in there that we can certainly answer, but there are questions in there that he knows the answer to already. So just to begin with, in my long list here. So with regards to the petition, I'm not getting het up about the numbers. I would just like to point out to the committee members, you know, the numbers in relation to the amount of people in the low traffic neighbourhood, which is 7,200. I'd like to point out, you know, that several people in particular households were signing the petition. I'd like to point out that, you know, people from outside the area were signing the petition. I don't particularly agree with his analysis that, you know, someone from Highland should be able to object to a traffic scheme in Bowes, you know, or somebody, you know, when we set up our low traffic neighbourhood in Edmonton, can you imagine people from Palmer's Green, you know, objecting to that, how the residents of Edmonton and the councillors of Edmonton might react to that? So, you know, that is a situation with regards to the council's constitution, and like I say, it's a debate for another time, but you know, that's my personal viewpoint on it. Plans for phase two, I think he touched on. Yes, as Councillor Giorgio knows, we've yet to hear from the Secretary of State with regards to the tranche 2 of the emergency active travel fund. We don't have a plan in place. I don't know where Councillor Giorgio's got that one from. We don't know where the bus gate's going to be. We have that's a bus gate on Brownlow Road itself. We have asked in the consultation that's happening at the moment, which is online, we have asked a question there, you know, would you, how would, I can't remember the exact wording, forgive me, Chair, but it, you know, it concerns that bus gate on Brownlow Road. So we are trying to get some information, you know, now that we can use later. But, you know, with regards to a timescale with phase 2, we have absolutely no idea, because Mr. Shapps has yet to inform us whether we're getting any funds and what kind of timescale he's going to impose on us. So I think that's phase 2. Okay, so the next thing was Councillor George, you asked about people who can't fill it in online. As we told Councillor Georgia in meetings, what we're hoping to do is do a pop-up in the area where officers will be providing, you know, COVID restrictions allow for it. Officers will be on hand, socially distanced, and, you know, anybody who's not able to fill out the consultation online for whatever reasons, you know, perhaps they're disabled, etc., then they will be able to come to that pop-up, and our officers will listen to them, note down their objections or support for the scheme, and that will be included in the consultation. I think Councillor Georgiou then went on to talk about blue badge holders. As we've said to Councillor Georgiou in various meetings, we are trying to figure out or find out, you know, exactly where, you know, people in the area who may be blue badge holders or disabled are, so that we can individually contact them, which is what I'd love to do. We're facing significant GDPR issues with regards to that at the moment, which I hope we can, you know, I hope we can get past those issues, and officers are working really hard to that. But I think that, you know, one-on-one correspondence with disabled people with regards to their particular issues is very important for us to take that into account, and we will action that going forward. So next, Councillor Georgiou touched on the ambulance service in Edmonton. As I say, we're in constant touch with the ambulance service. Richard, I think Richard talks on practically every day from what he says to me. So, you know, as I've said, they were the ones that told us that they would like to see a camera on Warwick Road. That has been done at some expense. There are certain emails floating around. I've seen those online. They're freedom of information requests. They're a snapshot in time. So, you know, they've been, the information request has been made on a certain date, and there are subsequent emails to that. There are other emails that weren't included in that. But let me hand over to Richard now with regards to the ambulance service in Edmonton and that kind of situation, and also Richard can pick up as well, if he may, on the evaluation of the consultation and how that might take place.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've seen some of those emails on social media. There was an objection from the London Ambulance Service as during the discussion of the designs. We discussed that with the London Ambulance Service as we were discussing these strategic routes, and that objection was based on sort of perceived increase in potential journey time for the team getting to and from work, and that was a concern. And you know, we acknowledge that schemes like this do mean that some people have to take slightly different routes for those type of journeys, but wasn't an operational objection to the operations of the LAS. In terms of the consultation, people can request paper copies. They can call us or email us, and we can send those out. And yeah, on the website, and Councillor mentioned some of the, you know, we have listed out the different factors that we'll consider as part of the consultation, which I won't list them out because I'm conscious of time. They've not got particular metrics set against them. The report that is produced will have to balance out the various bits of data and the analysis, and will provide commentary on how in the round it feels the scheme has performed. It's difficult to identify sort of one key metric. The whole of the data that we collect will build a picture that will form a formal report that will then invite a key decision on, and that decision in itself can then be subject to further scrutiny. That's all, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just quite cautious on the time. I'm worried that members are not going to be asking questions. Councillor Georgia, I hope that has summed up your queries, because there is Councillor Greer who's been waiting quite patiently to ask her question. If that's okay, if Councillor Greer, if you could put forward your question, thank you.
Yeah, I'll be very quick because okay, so the petition was submitted. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the implementation, and now that this petition is here, is there engagement with is it Roland that did the presentation? Was it? Yeah. Is there now going to be that kind of interaction? Because what I see is that this petition is very good in the sense that bringing out some of the issues that have been raised, but I also think it's quite important that we look at the timeline that happened. So there was an implementation that was given at 8 weeks. The 8 weeks is still a trial. Was there going to be this kind of full consultation that we're now got from the 11th of September to 11th of March? And within that, as part of the 7,200 residents that I think Councillor Barnes has mentioned, are we able to consult with them in a different type of way, not just in terms of the website? Because I've looked at the website and it is very detailed in Q&A and some of the vision that has actually been taken place, so people can get a lot of answers from that. But I just want to know where we go from here to actually moving it forward, and not dismissing the queries that have come out of the petition, but how we actually engage with our residents and making sure that we're pulling people along rather than he said, she said, we said. I'm not really into that, and I think we have to have collective responsibility. And I welcome your presentation, Councillor Barnes, and I also think that from the outset, I think Jeremy Chambers did state that any decision would be at the behest of Doug Wilkinson, who's the officer that actually made the decision in terms of implementation. But again, so those are the bits that I'd like to know, where we go to now and how we engage with our residents, making sure that we're moving forward with some of the issues that have been raised with this particular scheme, and the end game of 6 months and how we implement those changes moving forward, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greer. I think, Jeremy, did you want to mention or?
Yeah, if I could, Chair, I'll just pick up the final point raised by Councillor Greer. When the committee has finished debating this matter, they're at liberty to note the petition, take no action, or refer the matter back to the decision maker. And the decision to proceed with an experimental traffic order for the Bowes Low traffic neighbourhood was an operational decision taken by Doug Wilkinson, the Director of Environment and Operations. So that was the point I was clarifying to councillors before the meeting went live, and I just thought it'd be useful if I confirm that during the live meeting. And I'll keep quiet now and hand over to Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yes, Councillor Barnes, if you could just respond back. And like I said, we've got another few minutes, which I would like to sum up, and thereon we could conclude the matter. The questions, that will be the end of the questions, because we don't have any other time. There are still officers waiting for the next item, and I really do apologise to the officers that are waiting. Thank you.
Okay, Chair. Firstly, that was an excellent question from Councillor Greer. I know Councillor Greer personally, and I know that that she wants residents to have their say. I feel exactly the same. I don't want to give the impression that I was attacking the petition tonight. What I want to say is that I just feel the petition was one-sided. I feel it was full of misinformation, and I wish that Bhora had taken into account the other opinions of its residents. Like I've said, maybe formed a committee that could have put its case forward in a balanced petition. So please, don't. I'm not discounting the petition at all. As I said previously, I'm having meetings with these groups. I'm having a one-on-one with a representative of 5 or 6 groups in the area. I would love them to feed back to me at that point, as much information as they can. I will feed that into the consultation. I will speak to officers about that. I'll speak to Doug and Richard about that. And with regards to the consultation, if people can't get online, please request a paper copy, or if you need, very specialist help, we will try to get an officer to help you to fill in the consultation, or even take your comments over the phone that can be fed into the consultation. But because of officer time, we would prefer you do it online or on paper. But if you have if there are special needs or such like, then please do let us know. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Doug, finally, if you want to make a comment, and then I would like to summarise. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was just really to add to Councillor Barnes and to respond to Councillor Greer around consultation when she specifically mentioned engaging with Roland and the group. Of course, we want to engage with Roland and the group and everybody. We're not in the business of excluding people from consultations. We want to hear from everybody and all their views, so that we get a really rounded picture of people's views during this consultation period. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just before I do sum up, I understand there are ward councillors who are present, but unfortunately at this meeting, members were the priority to ask questions as it's come to Overview and Scrutiny Committee. But if there are other further questions that members or ward councillors, I understand they will directly can contact the officers or Councillor Barnes with their queries.
Chair, sorry to interrupt before you sum up. Is it possible for me to move a recommendation based on what various colleagues have said this evening? Is that part of this process?
In my sum up, I was actually going to ask if there was a recommendation from the committee, but if I could leave that to the end, if I could just quickly sum up what was discussed, so members of the public can be aware of what was, just to get a summary if they've joined in late. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So just to quickly sum up, we had the lead petitioner, Roland, who did start off the petition. He did mention, I'm just going to touch up on the areas that he did mention. Sorry if I do miss any points, but it was he did say that one of the points that he said were it's not COVID safe, the congestion caused, it reduces independence of elderly, planning day-to-day life is like lottery, car use is vital, and the diversity of residents, the key link of the North Road, sorry if I missed the word, no facility locally, which limited, and there was a comment on obesity, and there was a comment on, as the Mark Spencer's, sorry, I didn't mean to mention, worship areas, and not everyone could walk or cycle, takes some people nowhere, but it's like a trap to some. 1 month that this has been going, and he mentioned that there's been displaced traffic. He mentions key points. He said access to emergency services, high density housing. He mentioned Bowes School facing carriageway, and on health and well-being, Metropolitan Police on incidents, disabled and elderly face barriers, and it's hard. So about the data that's given to date, and for council to look at day-to-day lives. That was just a brief of what the lead petitioner mentioned, and Councillor Barnes responded. I'm just going to be quite brief to say that he said the LTN filters ends of certain roads for crisscross for short journeys. There's camera enforced filters. Bowes is plagued with through traffic. There was a mention of ways increasing direction to neighbourhoods. Ward councillors lobbied for solution for many years was mentioned, and the local MP has also voted for this in Parliament. Bowes has a well-served transport link. Drivers who are able to walk or cycle should be recommended. And there was a mention of traffic evaporation, cleaner air, and on obesity and climate change, and that the official government policy is on LTNs. There was an 8-week period to implement this due to government funding, and the next LTN, there was a mention of Edmonton, and Councillor Barnes has mentioned that 8 weeks was a short time, and increase space during COVID was mentioned. And sorry, just to mention again, and that there was some certain misinformation in the petition, which Councillor Barnes touched upon certain areas, and that there is a 6-month live consultation, which there will be also virtual meetings, and there was a mention of Bhora. There's a campaigns about too much traffic. There has been previous surveys, and just that petition, Councillor Barnes did mention that the petition may have scared residents, and that, just to reiterate, there is a 6-month consultation ongoing, and there were questions raised by Councillor Has Yusuf on electric vehicles and the deadline of the consultation, which I understand it started from 11th September to March. Now it's till March 2021. It's an experimental period. Councillor Edward Smith asked on the principle behind this and the mobility issue, and the consultation after phase 1, and about questions on emergency services. And Councillor Achilles Giorgio also asked questions on phase 1 and phase 2, especially on the funding, and about the next steps of the scheme. And then Councillor Margaret Greer asked about 7,200 residents. Can we consult in any other way? And Councillor Barnes responded that officers are always more than welcome to help to fill in, and there is also a mention that as well as it being online, it's also could be requested for a paper copy could be requested. Hopefully that has been a sum up. I think I just wanted to ask, so as Jeremy has explained, this petition could be, we could either note what was mentioned by members, or we can take no action, or recommendations can be put forward by the Overview Scrutiny Committee, which could be referred back to the officers. Okay, I think Edwards, you had a recommendation to put forward, if you could.
I would like to move a recommendation, quite simply, that the and I don't know whether this would be addressed to Councillor Barnes. I suspect it would, rather than Doug Wilkinson, but perhaps we can advise that. But the recommendation would be that the phase 2 works are not proceeded with by the council until a full and proper consultation has taken place, and that consultation should involve all the normal things, letters to residents, virtual meetings if necessary, questionnaires, and so on and so forth, and a report at the end of the process, which tries to bring together the views of the outcome of the consultation. So it's a bit wordy, but you get my drift, I'm sure. And I think a lot of the members of OSC have made similar comments, really. But it is, if we need a vote, well, we could take a vote, I suppose.
Jeremy, did you?
Yeah, I think it needs to be clear to the committee that that is a request that is being made by the committee, if it is agreed, for Councillor Barnes to consider, because as I said earlier, the committee cannot make executive decisions. I think that's what Councillor Smith was seeking to do
yes.
in his suggested proposal. In terms of what happens now, Chair, that needs to be seconded and either unanimously agreed by the committee, or if not unanimously agreed, members need to indicate whether they're for it or against it, but it needs to be seconded first.
Chair, I'm unclear as to what we're being asked. Sorry, I do need to be very clear, because my understanding from Jeremy, sorry Chair, when we first started, was that we can either accept the position moving forward as we are, or refer it back to the officer that made a decision. Those were the two bits that my understanding. If I've got that wrong, then please clarify. And then now Councillor Smith is making another proposal, which again I think we need to be clear about before we make any decision. Thank you.
I'm happy to comment on that, Chair, if that would help. I mean,
yes,
if the matter was relating to the decision taken by Doug Wilkinson to implement the experimental traffic order, the only place that could be referred back is to Doug Wilkinson, because he made the decision. That's why that couldn't be referred to Councillor Barnes, because he wasn't the decision maker for the experimental traffic order. I do not believe that Councillor Smith is asking for that. I believe that Councillor Smith is asking that Councillor Barnes, as portfolio holder, considers not implementing the second phase of this process until such time as the consultation exercise has been completed. I'm slightly paraphrasing it, but I understand that is what Councillor Smith is asking, which is slightly different than referring something back to a decision maker. I think it's within the remit of this committee to make that decision if it is seconded and agreed, and then it would be a matter for Councillor Barnes to consider as the portfolio holder as he sees fit. So I hope that answers Councillor Greer's question and is acceptable to Councillor Smith, and Councillor Barnes is clear about what is also being suggested. But as I say, it needs to be seconded and agreed by the committee in any event.
Can I make a comment, Chair, on that?
Yes.
Just to respond, I mean, we have no idea what kind of time frame we're going to be given. The Secretary of State gave us 8 weeks to implement this. If we get a similar time frame for the second phase, then we're going to be in the same situation. But if we're given more time, yes, of course, we'd like to engage, but it just depends upon what time frame is given to us. And if we're not able to engage because the time frame is so tight yet again, then we will do a full consultation during the experimental period, which is what we've done now, allowing everyone to have their say.
Could I just amplify, not amplify, but respond to that? What I'm saying is, I understand that there's complete uncertainty about the funding for phase 2. What I'm requesting, so the committee is absolutely clear, is no matter what the Secretary of State decides to do or doesn't do, and whatever the timescale is that we do not know, that the council or Councillor Barnes, should I say, will not take a decision on phase 2 until the consultation period is completed. That is what I'm asking.
Chair, this is completely hypothetical. Councillor Smith is asking for something that's.
Sorry, Councillor Barnes. It's just Councillor Smith. I understand the petition has been put forward, but this is my view. Just from what I'm understanding right now, we don't have. I don't think we have because you would see in the information pack. Today's meeting has just been discussion based, and we don't really have on hold the consultation, the example consultation with us for us to make a comment on that. I understand there are queries on that, but I'm just quite curious as to how we can make a recommendation without having the solid base to making such a recommendation, if that makes sense, because I haven't personally seen the full live consultation yet, because it was not provided in the papers as this was a petition. I'm not sure if members do understand what I'm trying to get at, but it's just I'm quite confused as to how we are going to make a recommendation without having the base to the in-depth information, if that's made sense. I think Councillor Gray, did you have a comment to make, or did I?
No, sorry, Chair. Yes, sorry. I totally agree with that. I mean, whichever way this goes, I don't know if we can put it to committee, but I won't be supporting that amendment at all, or that proposal.
Jeremy, would you suggest that we go ahead with a vote to the recommendation, because it is a recommendation that should be coming out from the committee and should be agreed either by votes, or from what I can see, it can't be unanimous because some members may refrain from voting or abstain or vote against.
I think I should give us a little bit of clarity, and I'm sorry if I gave any confusion on this matter. This is a meeting of the Scrutiny Committee to consider a petition. It is of no relevance to the decision that has been taken by Doug Wilkinson in the normal course of events for this committee. And I'll expand on that so everybody is clear. When decisions are taken by Cabinet or individual Cabinet members or officers which are key decisions, they are subject to call-in provisions, and all members of this committee are well aware of those provisions. The decision to implement the experimental traffic order was an operational officer decision. It was not a key decision, so it is outside the remit of call-in. So the reason this matter is before the committee is not to challenge or robustly interrogate a decision before the decision is implemented. The decision taken by Doug Wilkinson has been implemented. The matter is before this committee because the council's rules on petitions have different tiers for different numbers of signatures, and this one falls within the scrutiny committee. Ordinarily, what would happen when any petition is being considered, whether it be at council or at scrutiny, is the petition would be debated, as it has been, having heard from the petitioner and the relevant cabinet member and senior officers, and the committee would refer the petition to officers or the cabinet member to give consideration to the issues raised in the petition as part of the ongoing consultation. Now that is ultimately almost the maximum remit of the committee. I mean, the committee could, if it wished, and I'm certainly not advocating this personally before anyone thinks I am, list a series of issues they'd like to be considered as part of the consultation in terms of, when we're considering responses. But the reality is the decision to implement the Bowes low traffic neighbourhood by experimental traffic order has been taken. It was a lawful decision. My advice was sought on it. It is now been implemented, and the required consultation during the experimental order is in place. And I think, as one of the councillors mentioned, when ultimately the consultation responses have been considered, any decision to permanently implement the scheme will of itself be a key decision in the normal course of events. So the committee needs to have, be very, very clear on what the actual proposal is here. As I say, procedurally, and I'm happy to talk about procedure all night. I'm sure you're not. Procedurally, the Councillor Smith has put forward a proposal which has yet to be seconded. Whether that proposal has any meaningful effect in terms of Councillor Barnes being able to consider it is a different matter, because it may not. It may never come into play, as has been suggested. But strictly speaking, procedurally, we have a proposal which has not been seconded.
Okay, so if I could just say, if Councillor Smith's proposal, is it seconded? I think that's where we could start off, because thereon.
Chair, sorry, could I ask Jeremy a point of procedure, if I may? I'm really sorry to interrupt you. I'm still slightly confused. Councillor Smith is going to talk about another traffic order, not this traffic order, and a completely hypothetical situation. So I don't understand how it's within the purview of this particular overview and scrutiny committee to make a recommendation on a completely different traffic order.
Well, and on a hypothetical.
It's completely. I don't understand how the committee is now going to start talking about a completely different traffic order. That's what I'm confused about, Jeremy. Sorry.
Could I, perhaps I could add just some clarification. I don't know to what has been said. The documentation that went out to residents about the low traffic neighbourhood scheme went into considerable detail, quite rightly, about phase 1 and phase 2. Now, phase 1 has been implemented in terms of the temporary, so there's no point referring the decision back because it's been taken, as was said. So given that we've been discussing for the last hour and a half that there were concerns by residents, or some residents, about the consultation process, what I'm trying to achieve is to ensure that there is a proper consultation about phase 2. and that no decision on phase 2 is taken until that is carried out. That is all I'm saying.
Chair,
Sorry,
it didn't go into
Through
great
the chair,
detail.
yes.
Sorry, Chair, it didn't go
Councillor
into
Barnes.
great detail about phase 2 because we do not have a plan for phase 2. You know,
Well, I'm
Councillor
simply going on the
Smith,
information that I've seen.
Councillor Smith is incorrect when he states that there is detail on phase 2 because we do not know where we're going to put the bus gate on phase 2.
I'm just quite, I'm just sorry, Margaret. I think we just need to come to a conclusion on what method we're going to take, because I understand, Jeremy. Sorry, yeah. If you can just clarify on what the procedure could be from now on, so we can be aware of what.
Of course.
And I understand there was a recommendation put forward, and I have not heard a seconder, so I'm just quite.
Chair, I'm happy to second that. I've been trying to wait for a break.
Just on this, Chair, before we go any further, and it may be me understanding incorrectly Councillor Smith's intention. If it is, I'm sure he will correct me with haste. When Councillor Smith is referring to phase 2, the way he was describing it, I thought he was talking about the making permanent of the experimental measures. If Councillor Smith is talking about some other future phase involving different measures in different streets, that's a different matter altogether.
He is.
But I'm not. Councillor Barnes is saying he is. I'm not sure. So perhaps Councillor Smith could clarify. When you refer to phase 2, do you mean something entirely different to this and another stage altogether involving different streets and different measures potentially, or do you mean the making permanent of the current experimental traffic orders, which is the subject of the petition?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I agree that. We need further clarification. The thing is, although we've been talking about the 6-month consultation to March anyway, over and over again, I made certain assumptions about what that would include. I assumed it was about phase 2. Now, however, if that is incorrect, and it is the 6-month, which is a very long period, consultation about making a temporary traffic order permanent, if that is what that means, I would, as I say, question the length of time necessary for that. Then I would have to modify my recommendation because what I suppose I would like perhaps Councillor Barnes, one of the officers, to explain what their proposal is for the consultation for the whole of the, for phase 2. If we're going to have 6 months consultation for the permanent order, if that's what they're saying, and then presumably there will be another 3 or 4 or 5 months consultation on top of that, which seems absurd. So perhaps if somebody could explain that, then we might take this further.
Councillor Smith, I think the questions we did have that time to ask our questions, and I'm just I think we're just I don't mean to be any offence, but I think we're just going off topic now, because the issue is the recommendation, which I understand was, as Jeremy explained, about I think you was more focused on the phase 2, and we can't really make a decision on that. But I'm just quite, I think it's time that we need to move on. And if there isn't, if the recommendation isn't amended, and if you're not withdrawing the recommendation that you've made because you cannot recommend it as it doesn't, as we can't make a decision on that, then I would ask that we either note what was discussed in this meeting and note what we've received from the petition as well as from members, and it's noted, or we I can't say we take no action because we have raised concerns, and that's my proposal. We should move on because we still have another item. And I think
you would like to speak. I think.
Yes, Councillor Giorgio. Yes.
Can I suggest that what we've been discussing is phase 1. We've not really discussed phase 2. We've acknowledged that phase 2 could take place if there is funding for it. We've acknowledged that the plan, the design that went out to residents did show a bus gate in Brownlow Road, and part of the questionnaire asks what the thoughts are on that bus gate, where it might be. But And the plans also showed a closure of Goring and Westbury, which indeed was a point I made, that the questionnaire needs to take that on board. So I hope Doug will go away and think about that one. But our discussion has mainly been around phase 1. And that's, I think, what the focus of the petition has been, although I do know that residents are concerned about phase 2 as well. And perhaps many of them did sign the petition with a view to phase 2. But I think the focus has been on phase 1. I would ask that, given that LTNs are new to us, that this is the first one that we've seen go in, and we've seen another one going into Fox Lane, and I think if there is funding, we're likely to see others go in throughout the borough, across the borough, as a way of achieving the various things that officers have said. I think we should use this opportunity to learn about the implementation of this phase in Bowes. So given that it's going to, this period is going to last for 6 months, I would ask that it comes back to us in 6 months' time, or at the end of that 6-month period. And I think this is a point that Richard Eason made. He said, and I quote, "The report will be subject to further scrutiny." And I think that's what we should do in 6 months' time, is actually to have a look at what we have learned from it, and how it's been evaluated, and indeed how to go forward. So I would ask that it comes back in 6 months' time.
Okay, Jeremy, did you?
Yeah, sorry to be procedural, Chair, and I know it's been a long meeting already, but I think Councillor Giorgio is suggesting a request is made that the matter is brought back to scrutiny after the consultation, in advance of any formal decision being taken. That's what I heard in very brief summary. Now, we have a proposal which has been seconded. I believe it was proposed by Councillor Smith and seconded by Councillor David Sanders. I wasn't sure who seconded it. My thoughts are, in order to bring this part of the meeting to a close, if Councillor Smith and Councillor David Sanders are happy with that suggestion by Councillor Giorgio, they amend their proposal and seconding to cover that, and the committee determines whether it agrees it or not, because that is clearly within the gift of the committee to request the matter is brought back prior to any formal decision being taken at the end of the consultation. Does that help? Does it make it work?
It sort of helps. Could I just, don't want to prolong this, I'm losing the will to live, as I'm sure most of us are. But when you're talking about no decision should be taken until it's brought back to overview and scrutiny, what decision are we talking about? Decision to do what, or?
Well, it would be completely wrong of me, Chair, or anybody, officer or member, to seek to predetermine a decision which is subject to ongoing consultation as we speak.
No, but
I was suggesting
the decision. I mean, that's, I don't understand.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair. Can I intervene? Point of order. Sorry, can I have a point of order, Chair?
Yes.
I'd really like us, and I know that there's procedural stuff, but I was very clear when I came to this meeting. There was a presentation on the petition. There was a presentation from the officers. There was an opportunity to ask Q&A questions, and we were given the remit that we would either accept the position, knowing that there was a consultation taking place moving forward, or we would refer it back to the officer who made the decision. There's been various proposals. I think we should come back to the remit of what this committee, scrutiny panel, can do on those particular questions that were asked, and whether we wish to move forward with that, and then we actually move on. I accept that Councillor Giorgio is part of this particular process, and we as scrutiny can ask for anything to come back to us at any point, and we know that the consultation is happening, but we go back to the original remit that was our part, so that we can then move on to the next bit. Otherwise, we will be here all night.
I agree.
Okay. Could I just say, so I'm not going to add
because
to
I understand there's officers and members still waiting for the second item,
yes,
and they have another meeting. So can we just, because it's just becoming.
Yeah, I know. I'm just going to bring this to an end now because it's going on. We're getting wrapped up in a lot of hair splitting. I think, all things considered, I would like to stick with the proposal I made, that I moved earlier on, and that we go for that. What are you saying?
It's not within the purview of this.
Okay, Jeremy, if you can just clear it out, and we can just move and move to the next step, because it's just becoming like a vicious circle. We're just going round and round.
It is, Chair. You're absolutely right. I asked a question of Councillor Smith when he talks about phase 2. Is he referring to the making permanent of any current temporary traffic order that is the subject of the petition, or is he talking about an entirely different set of roads and restrictions and whatnot? I'm still unclear. My advice to you, Chair, as monitoring officer, is there is a recommendation before you which lacks clarity and therefore legal ability to be enacted, and it should be rejected, and somebody should put something else forward. That's my advice, because I've sought to clarify this several times. There is no clarity on what the proposal actually is, even though I've asked a direct question. So I would say reject it in your capacity as chair and ask for somebody else to move something else.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy. I am relying on your advice, and I would say that as there is no clarity, and still ask for you that you've asked for clarity, and we haven't received that. Therefore, I would say that we reject this and we move on. If there is if there is another proposal, I'm really.
There is another proposal, if I may say so. I accept what's been said. But the alternative proposal is the one that's just been set out by Jeremy, i.e. that we recommend to to Doug Wilkinson that the permanent traffic order is not brought into being until into operation until there has been a proper consultation completed.
Okay,
I can't make it more clearer than that, frankly.
Okay, understood. I'm gonna go on. Is this seconded?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, Jeremy, can we go to vote on this recommendation? Because
yes, and I would give members complete comfort that the recommendation put forward that we don't make a final decision until there's proper consultation is entirely acceptable, because the law requires us to do it anyway. So no member should have any discomfort on that recommendation as it has been put forward. It's been seconded, Chair, and I think you should say put it to the vote.
Okay, I do put it to the vote, and if we can move on, please. Thank you. And the voting process would, Claire, would you be, hello? So how would
I would suggest, Chair, that you read out a list of councillors of the committee and ask if they are for, against or abstain, and Claire Johnson will make a note of them.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy. So what we've heard from Councillor Edward Smith on his proposal, could I ask, so I'm going to go one by councillors to ask them. So Councillor Has Yusuf, do you vote in favour, against or abstain to Councillor Edward Smith's recommendation?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Birsen Demirel, do you vote in favour, against or abstain?
I'm voting against. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Edward Smith.
I'm voting for.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lee David Sanders.
I'm voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Achilles Giorgio.
Can I just be clear that the motion is that nothing is implemented until there is a full consultation? Was that right, Jeremy? Is that the motion before us?
Sorry, Councillor, I was on mute. I do apologise.
Sorry.
The motion before you is that no permanent changes on the current proposed LTN, which is the subject of the experimental traffic order, are implemented until such time as the full and proper consultation exercise has been completed. I've slightly formalised it, Councillor Smith.
And you have advised us to say that they can't be implemented until there is a full and proper consultation anyway.
Well, the full
Point
and
of
proper
voting.
consultation, exercise has begun, and
Yeah.
we don't,
So-
as a local authority,
so-
stop them without concluding
So,
them.
so therefore, the consultation is taking place now, as is being implemented, and so therefore I vote in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Giorgio. Councillor Elif Erbil. Can you say if you vote for or against or abstain? Hello, Councillor Elif Erbil. Okay, I think she's just leaving accidentally. I think she'll be rejoining. Okay, Councillor Margaret Greer, are you voting in favour, against or abstaining?
Well, I'm confused. So, and I think now that you've explained again, Jeremy, that maybe some of us are confused, but I'm going to vote against because we're in a consultation already, and the full and proper consultation won't be implemented until we finish this consultation. So I don't actually understand that proposal. So,
Sorry, can I just make point further as well?
Yes.
I mean, even though I voted, I'm really confused now, because if by law, statutory, we have to wait till the consultation finish, why are we taking a recommendation on which is something we're going to do anyway? So it's very confusing, I must say.
Absolutely right. We're agreeing to what is already being implemented. That's what we're being
Absolutely.
asked to do.
But there was, yes.
Yep.
yeah. So I don't know why we're even
So
doing
why
that
are we
then.
even
But it's
doing
just
it?
because a
Councillors, if I
recommendation
can be
was
clear, it's an entirely lawful recommendation, which I'm sure Councillor Barnes and Doug Wilkinson, as the senior officer and portfolio holder responsible for, will have absolutely no issue taking on board, because it's only a suggestion. Obviously, it's a suggestion that the council is required to do. Any committee is simply asking Doug Wilkinson and Councillor Barnes to undertake the consultation in an adequate and lawful and proper manner, which I can assure you, as the council's monitoring officer, they will do anyway. So
Yeah.
it is entirely proper, and it may seem that you're asking for something you know is going to be done, but that's what Councillor Smith asked for, and that's what was seconded. So it is entirely proper.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, it's a proposal and recommendation put forward. It is out for voting. So now I carry on with the vote. Councillor Elif Erbil, do you vote in favour, against, or do you abstain from Councillor Edward Smith's proposal? Hello, Councillor Erbil. We cannot hear you. Jeremy, I can see that Councillor Elif Erbil's on, but we can't hear from her. Would it?
Can I come back then, Councillor, and actually change my thing to abstain, please? Because it's going to be implemented, so I want to do it to that, please.
Okay, that is noted.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, I can, Councillor Elif Erbil. Can you propose? Have you heard what's been discussed? And do you know what you're voting for?
Yes, I do. I'm voting against because we need to hear more before a consultation could be made. Thank you.
Do you? I think we have got the vote for that, so that is against. So we, Claire, if I'm...
Sorry, can you confirm, Elif Erbil, what
She said against.
Against.
Okay. So we
Sorry,
have...
Can I just, as there was more clarification, sorry about that, as there were more clarification, I'm going to abstain as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Abstain. So we have 3 abstentions, 1 against and 3 in favour. And myself, of course, I would need to vote as well. I'm going to abstain as well, as I think we do need more clarity, and I don't want to vote in favour or against, so I'm just abstaining. And
so that is carried, Chair, 3 votes to 1.
Okay.
So the decision of the committee is to request that Doug Wilkinson and Councillor Barnes implement no permanent solution to the Bowes low traffic neighbourhood until such time as a full and proper consultation exercise has been completed. I would move on to the next item of business, Chair.
Okay, and we have ended this item. Thank you very much. We have had our votes, and as Jeremy has said, it has moved on. So I move on to item 5. And Councillor Barnes, thank you so much. I know it's been such a long time. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Doug, and thank you to the officers that have been present on this item. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5. It's the ICT and digital services, the custom experience, which the committee has asked to be put onto the work programme. I understand we have received a presentation and members have, I assume, have read through the presentation, and I would want to ask the officer presenting to just highlight the main areas and the challenging areas of concern. I understand, Faye, you would be I just want to say members have seen the presentation. It's just to save on time. Sorry, Faye, we have seen the presentation. If you can just pick up on the main areas and the challenging areas that you see as a concern that you could put forward to members. Thank you very much. And I'll move on.
Okay, we will do. Councillor Maguire would have been here today, but unfortunately, if you saw in the messaging, she had to leave. So just sort of on her behalf, like to mention that. And I've got with me colleagues. Can you hear me okay? Because I've had difficulties today with my internet, so I'm hoping everyone can hear me okay.
Yes, we can.
So just a couple of things that we'd like to point out. So
there's feedback, Faye.
Sorry, you've got a bit of feedback.
Yeah, it's feedback.
I don't know why that is. It's a bit strange.
It's kind of buzzing a little bit, but we can hear you.
Is that okay? Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, that's better. Oops.
I don't know what's happening. Okay. Doesn't help when you look after IT and your IT doesn't work. Okay. First of all, I just think what I'd like to do is reassure the scrutiny committee that accessibility is embedded into our thinking when we think about our customer journey, both now, but we've also got ambitious plans for the future in terms of making sure that our customer experience is accessible to all individuals. And if Councillor Maguire was planning to talk to you today about a good example of that, which is PayPoint, where we've made sure that our services are accessible throughout the borough, and you'll see in the slides deck how effective and successful that has been in terms of improving our accessibility for people to make payments, with over a third of our number of our transactions going up during COVID because of the accessibility that we've done. So we really welcome the scrutiny, because accessibility, and hopefully we can have some constructive dialogue around that. So we have 3 main channels of. So the other point, perhaps actually, you've said that there's been one of the slides talks about the 3 pillars of the programme. So we've got the approach now where we want to support our residents, ensuring that we maintain an accessible face-to-face service through the early help offer. So our customer experience is not just about having a transaction with our residents at the community hubs, but also is going beyond that. So we deliver a much deeper level of customer experience and support those that need early help. And that's been it's something we've been planning to do for a while, but actually we've accelerated progress after COVID-19 and got that up and going, and Lee Shelsher can tell you a little bit about that. As most sort of organisations do, we want to make sure that all our services are accessible, whether it's website, through the phone, or face-to-face. But just to reassure colleagues that we will continue to ensure that we're accessible on all of those channels through different routes, and we consider all of those relevant for different sorts of customers and meeting different needs. Lee, did you just want to talk a little bit about some of the new things that we're doing?
Hi everyone. Hello, Chair. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm Lee Shelsher, Head of Customer Experience and Libraries. Absolutely, as Faye said, we're developing together with Adi Edarimi, who's the Head of Customer Operations, a real face-to-face and deeper level of support, ranging from financial support, housing support, and referral to adult social care through the community hubs. The community hubs now are operating at 2 flagship libraries, Edmonton Green and Enfield Town Library, and give a much deeper level of support with a real focus on prevention, early prevention, and very much active listening and responding. If somebody tells us that they can't access our digital offer, we've very much got that support there in the libraries. We have IT buddies, we have staff and others who will absolutely help anybody to get a form filled out or any interaction with council services. And actually, we're working with a lot more stakeholders to develop joined up early help solutions to issues, so to avoid escalation into other services, and actually to empower individuals and communities and promote resilience. And signposting and a holistic approach with partners such as Job Centre Plus, health visitors, citizens advice, etc., really becoming the front door to the council for our residents. Following that, as well, as Faye has said, we're looking at developing our offer, our digital offer. So at the moment, we're looking at new ways of actually getting a much better offer to our residents. That consists of providing accessible digital services. So we've learned a lot through lockdown around because actually what we are able to do is to really raise the profile of our website as being a place where people can go to for information and help. During COVID-19, we had something like 70,000 page views on our resident website, and we had around 25,000 accesses to our website for businesses, which we really supported as well. Not only the residents, but the businesses of Enfield. We've got much better data now going forward for our web users. And what we've actually found is that a lot of people use our website via mobile devices. So again, in our planning for digital services in the future, we really want to ensure that nobody is excluded. So what we're doing, our future improvements, we're looking at our content management system, which is basically our new website, and we've got a new provider for that. And we're working with them to develop and design with different groups, and I'll go through those in a minute. But also at the same time, we're looking at our customer relationship management system, which is used in the contact centre, which really will enable both of those to get a much better front end to back end service for customers. So much more accessibility, inclusive digital experiences, right first time service delivery, which is really important to build confidence in people using digital, increase effective customer self-service. So we want it to be an enjoyable experience as well for our customers, and use customer data and feedback to improve service delivery more than ever. So to give you an example for the website, we're starting engagement with customers and key stakeholders to influence the redesign. So designing with and for. So participants in that will be people like the Over 50s Forum, Disability Network Group, Ethnic Minority Network, Parental Engagement Network, Youth Parliament, and build upon our interaction with businesses through COVID-19 as we built up those relationships during lockdown. Going through internal stakeholders, so working with other services, working out what they need in a website going forward. Surveys in newsletters, so we've just had a brilliant addition to the e-newsletter that's gone out to people, and so far we've had a brilliant hit rate in response. But actually as well, we're making sure that we don't exclude anyone in that feedback. So we're going to be doing a survey with the contact centre to ask people why they didn't use the website, why they come through to the telephony, why that was the preferred method of communication. And we've just started, and it's quite exciting, I think, for us. We've just started resident interviews. I've sat in amongst those, so we found out that people find it a little bit more difficult to search our website at the moment. That seems to be a main blocker for people. So definitely with this new supplier, we'll be looking to make big improvements with that, and to ensure that we can build that confidence. So when somebody actually wants to pay for it, request it, etc., that it takes them through from one end to the next seamlessly, simple, straightforward. We're looking at future improvements in our telephony. So we have currently multiple telephony systems, and we're looking to move to one. The advantage of that is that will stop transfer between different systems, potentially losing customers as we transfer. We don't want to triage customers with lots of different touch points. We want to make that as simple and straightforward as possible. So that's some of the improvements that we're making. We're also going to be far better at gaining that insight and knowledge with those pieces, ensuring that the new pieces of technology give us that insight and make sure that we find out first time exactly where something's gone wrong and fix it, because a lot of the systems that we're now looking at are far more in-house to enable us to be able to do more as reactive and proactive as possible. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. That was quite in depth, actually. It's quite important, as knowing, customer experience is one of the main areas, of course, for our residents, and, for residents to actually get in touch with the council, or, for them to actually be supplied with a service that, they are able to actually make use of. Thank you so much, Lee. Faye, did you want to just quickly sum up, or is that it? So I
No,
could
we'll leave the opportunity for questions. I think I'm sure that hopefully there are some. We're looking for some constructive feedback, things we should be thinking about in our redesign.
Yes, I think the PowerPoint was very, it was quite clear, as, there was quite a few PowerPoints, but it was quite short, and, it was to the point, which I think that was really helpful. I really do apologize for the timing of this, and I am really sorry about that. But I just had two questions, and I'm going to just open it up to the members. I understand there's been mention of libraries, so on page 19 and and there was a mention of Edmonton and Town Library being open. What are the current situation with libraries? What libraries are now open? And I understand there has been a few more libraries, such as Ordnance Library, which has opened. But I just wanted to mention on that for support in particular. And my second question is, how, as on page 34, there was a mention of sorry, on the slide, where the cashiers' opening hours were restricted to 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. I'm just quite curious on how, residents that are working during those times, how are they able to, how can they work through the timing of that? And it is working days only. So, if they need to use the cashier counter at the Civic Centre, for example, how are they able to do it when the timings 10 to 2? They were my two questions. Thank you.
Okay, so shall I answer the cashiers one, and then I'll leave Lee to answer the libraries one, because it's his service area. So we actually had decided that we've actually shut the council's cash office, and instead people can pay the council through PayPoint. So what that means is that people can pay in their local newsagent, in their local many supermarkets. So we've got over 130 pay points in the borough, and people can now pay their council tax, business rates, housing in your local shop as a result. So what we've done is effectively we've made our services more accessible through now using PayPoint, and in addition to that, happens to be cheaper. And interestingly, one of the reasons why we chose to go down PayPoint was because of our wanting to make sure that whatever system that we used was inclusive, financially inclusive, because it was really important to us for people to be able to pay cash. With many people, we were using our facility to pay cash. So in terms of accessibility, since that's been in place since around about mid-March, that everyone can do that. So we've increased our accessibility, and we've seen over a third more transactions than the same time last year, interestingly, even though people have got less, during time of, the pandemic, we've seen a significant increase in the number of transactions. And, prior to that, there was a number, there was good communication. We've not had any complaints from anybody, and in addition to that, we did a significant amount of comms and engagement with all different groups before we implemented that, and it's been a really big success actually in terms of accessibility. Okay. And then Lee, over to the libraries, what our offer is at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. We initially opened with Enfield Town and Edmonton Green. We were following very strict guidelines from the DCMS, but also from the Libraries Connected, who are our kind of charitable governing body. As you can imagine, the teams were deployed to answering community lines, etc. So overnight, all the library staff went on to getting people fed, getting their medication, etc. And as soon as we had the opportunity to open, we were back, but taking it very steady and gradually. We've taken some advice by the direction of public health for health and safety, and very much listening to staff and customers around how they would feel safe. So we've put in different measures that's worked really well, and we've gradually opened more flagship libraries. So now we have 4 of our larger libraries open. We review this on a weekly basis at the moment, as I say, getting a steer from government guidelines, but also what our customers are telling us. So far, we've had brilliant Google reviews saying that people feel safe. They welcome coming back, which is great because we want to welcome people back, especially young people who are coming in using the computers, etc., for their educational needs. But yes, so far we've got 4 flagship libraries open, but we review that literally on a weekly basis.
And we have a full range of service. We have that's when the services that are accessible or available are browsing books, picking up books, and using the PCs.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Faye. They were my questions, and you have answered them in much detail than I expected. Thank you so much. I'm just going to open it up for the members. If members can indicate if they have any questions or if they wish to ask a question, and I can note down and we can take it in order. Members? I think Councillor Elif Erbil has indicated that she wants to ask a question. Thank you. Councillor
Hi,
Erbil.
Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes,
I just wanted to mention, how are the employees of the council coping with the demand, and how are we?
Just froze at the end. We heard the first question on how the council's coping. What was the second part?
Demand.
Okay, I think we've understood. I think the question was actually, if I've understood right, how the council's coping with the demand of, you know, from my understanding of the closures, or from face-to-face to, you know, becoming more mobile, I assume. Is that correct, Councillor Erbil? If we can just take the first.
I can talk in general if that's helpful about the impact of the demand on the council, if that's helpful as a sort of like a general sort of employees.
Okay, so sorry. Yes, I think we've understood the question. If Faye could.
Okay, so there are a few areas, you know, because obviously it's good to focus on, you know, moving what's happening now as opposed to go back. So I think we talked about Enfield stands together here at this committee, didn't we? So I don't want to focus on that, but I'd like to talk about what's happening now and some of the demand pressures and what impact that's having on staff. So I think first of all, one of the things that we're proud of that's meant that has worked really well now and continues to work really well is the ICT, because if the ICT doesn't work, as everybody knows, it's quite stressful, and so we've made sure that that's working for staff, and I think that's really important and has been a really good something we're proud of. And IT used to be something that staff used to find was something that stressed them, and we don't have that feedback anymore, which is really helpful in terms of that. Interestingly, during COVID and sort of subsequently while we've been working from home, I haven't got the figures to hand in terms of how many people are off with COVID, but interestingly, the level of stress and anxiety people off with that over COVID's reduced. So, I mean, you could make some kind of assumption around whether or not people are finding working from home works better for their work-life balance. I mean, you wouldn't know without talking to them, because obviously it's a bit of assumption, but it's a significant reduction in stress from staff. So thought that was interesting to know. And some areas that we find difficult for staff, and we have to think each time as officers around how to handle that, is additional demand from the government. So, for example, if you think about test, track and trace that the council's doing, or an area that I'm familiar with, which is under my service, around paying the 500 payments for people that are self-isolating. So each time something like that happens, we have to work as a service to implement those, often at pace, and you know, it was with officers who know what they're doing, so you can't easily get someone to come in and help, because you need to understand the system more specialist. So we do have, you know, peaks for staff, but what we've been really clear over is that they need to take leave. So communication's been out across the organisation to say that people need to take downtime, they need to ensure they have leave, and we are monitoring that as well as senior management team, that's happening to make sure staff welfare works. But actually a lot of staff are in appreciate, or because many of the people that I work with, and I think that's true across the council, have quite a passion for our residents in Enfield and making a difference. So although people are under stress, actually they're getting good job satisfaction from the experiences that they have. So I hope that gives you a bit of an insight. But I think the stress is quite interesting, isn't it? That people are less stressed now they're working from home.
Oh, definitely. Thank you, Faye. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we had Councillor Smith and then Councillor Giorgio and then Councillor Has Yusuf.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. The whole issue of ICT and customer experience has been a concern for some years, ever since all these new systems were introduced. I did take some comfort from the report, I have to say. I thought it was very clear. It's quite long, but indeed there was lots of useful information, so good. The two questions I have really, and this is a sort of overall question. I was quite surprised by the table on page 20, which looks at the way people contact the council. And we seem to have reached a stage now where virtually all the contacts I'm asking whether this is the case, that I understood it, that virtually all the people who want information from the council are now doing it through the website and associated buttons or emails, whatever whatever route that they need to use. And very few people now are contacting the council by telephone. And then there's, of course, web chat, which is negligible, but no doubt will grow as well as people get used to that idea. So the first question is that correct? And of course, you were referring to a new telephony system, which is going to be all bells and whistles. I had this conversation about 5 years ago with a former council officer who you will I'm sure remember, who was put in charge of implementing a new telephone system. I would just be curious to know what happened to that brilliant new telephone system and why it needs to be replaced in the way you're talking about. And my second question is, as always, about the digitally challenged. I get the impression from the various charts and so on that you expect people who can't use IT or they don't have IT devices or whatever it might be, will go to one of these hubs in the libraries, but there are only 2 of them, of course. I think they're obviously an excellent idea. But are there any plans to, and people live, elderly people, for example, who might struggle, could live anywhere in the borough, not necessarily near the 2 main libraries. So, I mean, are there plans to expand that particular network? So they're my 2 questions.
Okay. So in terms of contact, what the charts, and I can't count which slides they are, but I think it might be sort of COVID-19 demands and trends, perhaps, is it that one? But I can certainly talk to you about what's happened in general. So actually, because I think those charts focus quite a lot on the COVID position. During COVID, our overall contact from the council increased by around about 3%. If you look over the time period between, I think it's April and July this year versus April and July for the same time period, but the pattern changed. But interestingly, what's happened is and Addy might be able to comment on why he thinks this is, our level of web chat has gone up, and our number of contacts over the phone went down. But if you add them together, it's actually more contacts we have from the council than we had overall by phone or sort of through web chat. And interestingly, because we've actually maintained a high level of service during that time. So that's probably maybe the graphs don't they might not tell the full story. I'm not sure about the telephony system because I've only been here since 2018, but what I can tell you is that what we're doing at the moment, or one of the issues which I think Lee was explaining, is that we have a number of telephone systems, and so we can't track people. So for example, at the minute, when the call through, if we put them through to a different department, we can't pull them back, we can't find how long it took, we can't, you know, so that's not working at the moment. So in order for us to assess whether people are getting right first time and the speed of the overall customer experience, we need us all to be on one telephony system. And obviously that's good from an IT perspective, because obviously we need to rationalize our systems. The second question was around the digital and the hubs. Obviously the phone lines are open for everybody, so wherever you live in the borough you can still contact by phone. At the moment we are sticking with the 2 hubs. We will review the position, and obviously the reason why we've put the hubs in those particular areas is specifically, you know, Enfield town is an area with, you know, it's the town centre, is the main town area, but also Edmonton we chose specifically because of the deprivation in that area in terms of the access points. But we will continue to review that position. At the moment you can see that we've managed to do the hubs with no additional cost. We've managed to improve our services within an existing budget, and so we need to think about how we would continue to do that in the current COVID-19 position and how we transfer costs around. So that's one of the limiting factors in our and we've only had the hubs up and running for about 2-3 months, so we're all, is it 2 months, I think just over 2 months, so we're still also developing our services as well on that and working with other parts of the council, such as the team that working on skills and job creation, to work out how that works. So I think it's an evolving picture. So at the moment we don't have any specific plans. I wouldn't want to, as you know, I'm always quite open and transparent about these things, but we will continue to be reviewing that opportunity. I think it's really important in the future to think about that. Lee, did you want to say something?
No, I think that sums it up perfectly. Absolutely, we're reviewing, because the community hubs within Enfield Town has been an absolute positive experience, I think, for everyone involved. I think it's really a great example of everyone working together under one roof, a real front door to the council. But the positive feedback we've had from customers has been phenomenal, including lots of lovely baked goods that we receive on it seems like a daily basis, so which is lovely.
Okay, thank you for that. Could I just for clarification, Faye, going back to the first question, am I right in thinking now that the vast majority of, you know, residential queries to the council come through the website? Is that correct or not correct?
No, we still continue. So if you look at the graph, and Addy, you might well be able to comment on. Addy, would you like to come in and comment on how many calls you took today, for example, relative to others? You're on mute, Addy, I think. Just think it's an opportunity for Addy to speak because it's his service. If you're able to, Addy.
Good evening. My name is Adi Aderemi, and I'm the head of customer operations. Thank you, Councillor. The telephone channel continues to be our main means of engaging with customers. What you, as Faye was saying, what we have noticed recently is a displacement of traffic from the telephony platform to web chat and to the website, and that's because we're trying to promote digital solutions. We're trying to promote self-help, would rather customers help themselves, and that will be a gradual trend. And what the lockdown situation taught, the lesson we learned from that was that we saw a reduction of traffic coming through the telephony and web chat, and whereas more people were moving towards the web. People actually self-served successfully without face-to-face, without telephony, which tells us a lot that if we continue to improve our investment into the CRM, into the platform, as Lee was saying, and if you take a look at one of the slides that we provided, if you look at the slide, I believe it's slide 21. I don't know what page it is on your collection, because we have slightly revised pagination. What that tells you, what we've noticed at the community hubs is that as much as we are prioritizing helping people with vulnerable complex needs and vulnerable people. What we've noticed is that whenever we provide mediated self-service, we show them how to use the digital solutions. They've taken quite nicely to it, and because, as Lee said, we now have computers people can use. We show them how to use it, and what we are beginning to notice is that more and more people are serving themselves online rather than using it's good news. What that means is that when we are on the telephone, we can actually spend more time with people who need the time. So by deflecting to digital solutions, we are encouraging people to self-serve and to use what we have on the website.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that. That's what I wanted to hear. Obviously, the residents have to be encouraged to get to use the website more and more. That's the way forward. How you do that obviously is a bit of a long process, but nevertheless, so thank you for that. It would be useful to have some stats on this, on the relative use of the various channels that we've been talking about and how they are changing, say, over the last 12 months. But I just leave that with you. I think.
Yeah, we can pick that up we can easily provide that.
We can definitely provide you some
And
stats.
if that could be circulated to members maybe after the meeting, so we can actually have a general idea. Thank you so much, Adi and to Faye, and to officers. Edwards, if that's concluded, we move on to, I think Councillor Giorgio had a question, or he indicated that he wanted to ask a question.
Yes, thanks, Susan. I mean, one of my questions actually was one of the ones that Edward raises, which is why the new telephony system? And because I do recall a few years ago we put in a lot of money into a new telephony system. So I don't think I'm quite clear. I mean, I understand the whole idea then was to bring everything together. And a lot of money was spent on it.
I would have to do a bit of investigation because every one of us, Adi, Lee and I, none of us were hit. All of us are new. Yeah. So we'd have to go back. And perhaps they brought in the main system that we've got, but they never decommissioned the others, perhaps. I don't know. I'd have to go back and let you know.
Faye, perhaps I can just shed some light on that. Good evening, Councillor Giorgio.
Hi, Andy.
It's been a long time. So as you know, Lee and myself came in around 2018. That was at the tail end of the completion of phase 1 of the telephony platform you're talking about. Is the interactive intelligence. So what we are talking about now is what used to be the phase 2 of that project. It's changed names many times. It's pretty much a continuation of the same project. The iteration you witnessed in 2017 was phase 1. Around the summer of 2018, we embarked on phase 2, but there have been a few interruptions, changing personnel. People left the council. So what I'm doing at the moment is consolidating all the activities and all the progress we've made. What we are looking for now, as a matter of fact, I met with the current provider. What we are trying to do, we are not moving completely away from the platform we're on now, although we are looking at cheaper solutions, better solutions, because, and we met with them along with, I met with them yesterday along with my project manager. What we are trying to do now is go for a completely cloud-based solution, which will enable our agents to be more and to be less sedentary, if that makes any sense. During the lockdown period, what served us well was our ability to say to people, go home, grab your laptop and just log in from home. And that was 90% successful. We only retained about 10% of people on site who opted to remain. We were able, this new solution we are looking at will not just consolidate all the platforms we have, which will save the council a lot of money in licensing. As Faye has said, this will enable us to now monitor customer journey from A to Z. So that if I transfer a call from the contact center to planning, for instance, I would actually see how long it takes for someone in planning to answer that call and to complete that journey. We can't do that now because if I transfer someone from interactive intelligence onto MyTel, I lose sight of that conversation. And so what we are trying to do is synchronize all customer-facing telephony platforms so that we are all on the same platform. We can measure KPIs consistently. We can gather customer feedback consistently, and we can actually tell you a story about the customer. If we transfer them 5 times, we can tell you where the journey broke down. We can't do that now. So the solution we are looking at is not different from what you knew in 2017. It's just morphed into so many names, and but now I think we're near we're as near as possible to bringing it to completion. If that makes any sense, sir.
It does. That's very helpful. Can I just carry on with that? I have 2 questions. One which I'll ask you now, and then there's an IT one as well. So if I may, on being able to track that customer journey, two parts to this. One is, how good has it been, people being able to work from home with Wi-Fi internet access? And the second part to that is, of the list that you've given us, and I think you've given us tables here about accessibility of our phone service and so on. How many calls, what data do you have on calls that come through that are dealt with by the, I don't know what the right word is, by the first person receiving the call, as opposed to them having to be sent to someone else to answer? I know you have proper terms for that, and I can't remember what they are.
Resolution at first point of contact.
There you go. You see, I knew there was a flash term for it. So that's my first one. Well, there's 2 parts to that, and the second one, Faye, I suppose, is to you. And when on Teams are we going to be able to allow people from outside the council to come in onto TLE, onto Teams live events, that we can see them as opposed to them just having to phone in? Because we just had an item where someone was speaking to scrutiny from outside and had to do it by phone. In the Children's Services Scrutiny panel, I invited and I was pleased that 3-4 young people wanted to join us. But it's really very difficult. We can see each other and they're on a phone.
Yeah,
so we do need to move to a position fairly quickly. And Jeremy spoke about it earlier, actually, before you were on. Jeremy spoke about earlier in terms of trying to work on this to make it happen. So that's my second question. So I know it's not part of your thing, but I've got you here talking about IT, so I'm going to ask anyway.
Yeah,
so I'm being a bit cheeky with that one, if you don't mind.
That's okay. I think to be honest with you, I will probably have to take that one back to Kieran, and we have had feedback from working with Jeremy's team on that issue, and it is really important in a virtual environment that everyone's able to access, because it does make a really big difference if you can see people, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So I'll come back on that one, if that's okay.
Thank you. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. And then Adi, the first question. Yeah.
So I can give you figures on the first-time resolution, but I don't have the figures to hand.
Sure.
But I can tell you the percentile. It's we have a 42% transfer rate, if that makes any sense. So if we imagine that we take roughly 500,000 calls a year, 42% of those will be transferred. And that's not because we cannot deal with them. We simply don't have access to the line of business applications to deal with them. So if you imagine transferring something to the homelessness team, my officers would not have access to all the information they need, and not to mention the level of training. Some of these are quite sensitive, and that's one of the things we're trying to address with the community hub. If you look at the story on one of the slides we shared with you, that's a good example of not just dealing with that transaction, but actually conducting a deeper triage, delving more deeply into every aspect of that complaint. That's where we're moving to, and that will be replicated over the phone. Even as we speak, I'm working with Lee, and I attended a stakeholder meeting this morning. We're trying to engage with services like children's services, homelessness, housing, and all the other key statutory services, such that when calls come through to my contact center, the agent is not just transferring them. they're delving more deeply, so that maybe our
Mm.
transfer rate can go down to 20%.
Sure.
That will take time. We're already training officers as I speak
Mm.
to be able to have the confidence, and we also need access to the line of business applications that those businesses use. The CRM will provide a platform for that, because we can plug the CRM onto those platforms and extract the information at the contact center.
Can I just ask a supplementary to that, if I may? If a 42% pass rate, and I understand why you need to pass it on to sensitive areas such as housing and so on. I remember in the past, the problem was always trying to get through to somebody on planning. You know, was there somebody there to actually take the call if someone phoned in about a planning application? So my supplementary to that, Adi, is when your team passes that 42% on, are there other people there, whether it's in planning or whether it's in housing, who can deal with that call there and then, or is a person left hanging, which unfortunately is what happened in the past?
Sir, I will be very honest with you, sir. The journey, the planning journey, customer journey has improved significantly from where it was. One of the improvements we've made is that we've actually created a branch of the web chat function, so that officers in planning can also use web chat as a tool. So they can now engage customers both via telephone and web chat. So the journey is more streamlined. I don't want to mislead you. One of the difficulties we're still having is being able to measure, because the moment I transfer them from the contact center, they go onto Mitel or Teams, and there's no nexus between those platforms. So I cannot really tell you how long. But we are getting less repeat callers, if that makes sense. Normally, people will come back and say, you transferred me, but I'm not, no one is answering. That is reducing gradually. And Lee's team, they've done a fantastic job on the customer journey planning. Lee, am I correct on trying to help with how the journey can be made better?
Absolutely, Eddie, and especially now we're looking at the design of the website, that will hopefully see more improvements as we go forward. So absolutely.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. That's very informative. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Yusuf and then Councillor Gray, you had a question.
Lee just said the word website, which is good to hear. Looking at this report, it's really good. I'm so looking forward to Q2 in 2021, because we mentioned, well, Faye, you mentioned stress earlier. What used to stress me out was actually using our website. Or if I'm honest, it's such awful navigation. It's supposed to be loads of headaches in the past, not being able to find anything. And I got numerous complaints from my residents saying they can't access something, the button isn't working for them, whatever. Now, hopefully, how robust is this new website going to look? Are you going to have, I think you really need to make sure that your ordinary resident, all from all various communities, can actually understand it and find things. Now, I'm quite, I mean, I know how websites work. I'm quite, tech savvy. I know how to do stuff. But, with someone like average knowledge like me who has difficulty in finding stuff, and I'm quite good at my English. I mean, what chances other people have in a way? And this is just like, it's very, very frustrating. So will we be able to sort of see what this website is going to look like, and maybe sort of just evaluate how good it is? Are there going to be trial periods of people to sort of test it out? Because this is like a let's get it right now if you can. Thank you.
Question.
Yeah, and can I just say all the points that Claire's made were excellent. So thank you.
If I can take that one, Councillor Yusuf. Very much so. This is a design with and for. So what's been really interesting is that our absolute look and feel. This is a chance to really revamp the website. Even so far, when we've been speaking to residents in interviews, the search facility, the ability to find things quickly, has absolutely come to the forefront. That's because we've got a system at the moment that's kind of a legacy system that was never designed for really kind of a modern approach. And we know what a modern approach should be now in a council website. But actually, we're going to go further than that, because what we want to do is to design not only the kind of the layout, but actually even down to the fact that Do we have pictorials? Do we have a bin for the waste management system? So we'll be going through all of that, doing what we call A/B testing. So does a resident, does a stakeholder prefer this look or that look? So it will actually be from start to finish a complete new revamp of the website. So absolutely, we've gained a lot over this last since I've definitely been here since 2018, around feedback from customers, stakeholders, part of MEQs, etc., talking about the website. So now we're pretty confident that we know which direction to take, but we will be testing that out over between now and the new year with absolutely stakeholders, residents, etc., to make sure we've got it right. What's also interesting is that, and as I put in the slide, we're looking at brand new tools. So Browse Aloud, for example, allows us to look and change any font, any background for people who are visually impaired, people who might be dyslexic. English as a second language, it allows you to translate. So again, these are new tools and add-ons that we've never had before with our website. So absolutely, we will definitely be ensuring that we keep in touch with people over this period to make sure we get it right. And the supplier that we've got is brilliant at that. They come from both a corporate and a local authority world and have done some brilliant engagement with people from the start to the finish. So yeah, I'm confident that we won't get it right first time, but I'm sure by the end of the process, etc., we'll have done several iterations of what we want as a website.
Okay. Can I also say it'd be useful to try and help the deaf community as well with the website, because a lot of deaf people can't actually read English because it's not the first language, and they're also in bad heights, everything. So it'd be useful somehow if they can be helped as well. I'm not sure how, but it'd be, I think there's something to look into as well, really, and so that we don't sort of ignore any of our residents with any disabilities. But it all sounds very positive, so thank you.
I'm very like yourself, Councillor. I'm really excited, but I've been trying to keep quiet about it because I just want to get it delivered. No, we need to deliver this because everyone's been waiting for the website to change for some time. So, we wanted I wanted to get nearer to delivering before we started speaking about it. But we have got massive aspirations around what we want it to be like compared to where it is at the minute, and it might take a while, because these things are iterative over time to get there. But we want it to be a mode of choice. We want it to be much better than the private sector in terms of engagement, aspiration, and it's an opportunity not just to engage with the residents, but really think about businesses as well, the commercial side of what we do. So when people, I'll be quiet because otherwise I'll start talking. With massive aspirations. We need to deliver it first, though, don't we? So.
Thank you, Faye. I think we all kind of waiting for that because it is quite, it's where the access, the accessibility is quite important, and especially for our residents who, we would go on some, the Enfield Council website, for example, for for myself, obviously as a councillor, for meetings, for example, or residents inquiries. That's our first point of access, as well as the offices that we go to. So I think it's we're quite excited for that as well. Thank you, Faye. All right. I think we had Councillor Gray who had a question to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I just wanted to, on page 22, where it talks about accessibility of phone service. I'm really pleased. Is this during the months that we have?
Margaret, we can't hear you.
Sorry, Margaret, your
mic down.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to move it when I was breathing. Sorry, guys. Oh, thank you very much, officers. Thank you very much, Chair. I was just looking on page 22 when it talks about our accessibility of our phone service. This period is over the kind of lockdown, COVID period, where our numbers have gone up to like around 92.1%, in September, moving up from April. Is that period we're talking about? Yeah.
I'm just getting to the right slide deck. So you're talking. Yeah,
I'm on page 22. No, I just wanted to ask, do you really think that, obviously in terms of COVID, that's been a real situation for us all, but that this has given us an opportunity to really kind of refocus on building up our kind of like digital system, IC system, and also for you as well, AD, in terms of our face-to-face customers, how that's been for people working from home or through the webcam, and what has been that kind of feedback from customers about that experience, because there's been a lot of rumours that, you know, we've not been there face to face and there's been some hiccup, but I'm really quite clear that even if you're not face to face, you're actually on the phone and you're doing various things, and that feeling that you can be engaged has taken place across this kind of very difficult time. So I just wanted to ask about that as well.
Thank you.
And
Thank
just
you,
also I wanted to ask Adi, how many people have we got in our teams that are working across the council? I think that's really important. And just to say to everybody, thank you very much for all that you've done over this very difficult period of time.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. It's nice to get some thank you from from you. In terms of your question, so I'll be very honest with you. Initially, when the Civic Centre was closed, there was a misunderstanding by the public that meant that we were no longer offering face-to-face, and that was not the case. We had a prolonged period of consultation. We did comms. We used different methods of reaching out to people. We explored social media. We used local newspapers and we had signage outside the Civic Centre explaining to people that we're not shutting down face-to-face. What we are doing is we are moving to 2 new locations. The Civic Centre was simply not, suitable to under COVID restrictions in terms of social distancing. It was not fit for purpose, and we had to adapt quite quickly. We availed ourselves of the opportunity of the lockdown to quickly adapt Edmonton Green and Civic and the Enfield Town Library. So we now have 2 main hubs, and I'm not trying to blow our trumpet. We've got excellent feedback in terms of the people we've engaged. I've actually provided you some of the stories from residents, because more than ever before, we use that opportunity also to make a decision. Do we want to reopen face-to-face the same way it used to be, or should we learn the lesson of COVID and focus on the vulnerable and people who are digitally excluded and people who have complex needs and cannot help themselves? And that was why rapidly we transformed the service. So the face-to-face now is more geared towards people who cannot help themselves digitally, or elderly or disabled people with complex needs. And the stats we've provided for you in one of the slides will show you that even now, we're not actually turning people away who may have wandered into one of the face-to-face hubs, who actually should be able to help themselves digitally. On that occasion, we will help them and then show them how to do it next time. And as I said before, we've noticed that trend is being passed on. Less and less people are now coming in for simple transactions. People are coming in with more complex needs now, which means my officers are not rushed anymore, whereas before they just wanted to go through the queue. If you recall the days of the Civic Centre, people will queue out into the revolving doors. Those days are gone. People come in now, we spend time with them, we show them how to use self-service. For the elderly, we dedicate an officer to them. They help them through their journey. For people who need, for the homeless team, we are now co-locating with the homeless service. So if somebody shows up now and says, I've been rendered homeless, gone are the days where we say to them, go fill this form, go fill that form. We immediately call an officer. Sometimes they will come down physically, because we're now in the same location. They will sit down with them, complete that process for them, get them temporary accommodation, and the queues are more manageable than ever before, because we've done, and that's why we are going back to what Faye said. We want to do this properly. Before expanding, we want to make sure that we have the resources. We are not spending any additional money for this. We are going to expand to 2 more flagship libraries to make sure that in due course, people near to those locations have less journeys to, shorter journeys to make. They will probably go to Palmer's Green as it's close to them, or to Ordnance Road. So the other aspect of your question was around the push towards digital. Yes, what COVID-19, Leah and I had prolonged conversation about what the impact will be. What I noticed, because I was managing the COVID line, was there was a displacement from my contact center to the COVID line, what we call the 1966 number back in the day. So people who would normally call us for normal transactions had other concerns during lockdown. It was more about food, financial, support, medication. So their concerns were different. And we noticed a decline in normal calls, and we saw those displaced onto the. So we're answering actually possibly the same level of calls, as Faye has said before, but just using different channels and different avenues. But what we have noticed that people are more confident now. I mean, the skies did not fall because we didn't have face-to-face. People still serve themselves. People went online. We saw increased activity on the website. Web chat, as I've shown you in one of the slides, is now becoming a very popular channel. People are just actively, if anything, I'm struggling to resource that channel because I have limited officers. I have. And your final question, my workforce is 67 FTE in terms of frontline officers. That doesn't include my management team or more technical staff. In terms of people who can handle calls on day-to-day, and those are the same officers I use for face-to-face, web chat, telephony. What has helped us, and thanks to Faye and Sue, is that we've been provided facility to cross-train them. So it's depending on how busy we are on one channel, we are now able to rapidly, deploy people. So if we notice that the traffic on telephony is getting higher, we can now quickly deploy people from face-to-face to help with telephony and vice versa. And that's why our performance has been consistent of late. Yeah.
Excellent. And can I just ask, what's the ethnicity makeup of your team? And I'm pleased to hear that we're going to be doing all of this in other languages as well, in terms of making sure that we're actually, and also in terms of our disability under the Equality Act, really. But yeah, I would like to know what the makeup ethnicity of your team. If you can't give me that today, maybe it can be put in some
Not
kind
in
of
accurate
response.
figures, but I can tell you I probably have the most diverse workforce in the council. There are times when we've come across people who cannot speak a particular language. There's bound to be somebody in the contact center who will take over that call or face-to-face. And it's not planned. It's not like we were deliberately. It's just natural. It's the way we go for excellence. And it just happens to be that way.
Well, I won't put my union hat on because I'll say that those people who are given extra lessons in that should be in a hub and get an extra payment. Anyway, that's me done. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Adi. From the way you're actually expressing, I can see the enthusiasm, and I'm really, delighted to have officers, that are present here actually, in our council. I'm just quite glad. I just want to say that, and I want to echo what Margaret said about, the tremendous work that you do, and we can't be more grateful than, to you officers who are actually working day to day to, in and out, just specifically on, very, very important areas in such a difficult time. I think I was sorry. I just had to say that with full heart.
Thank you very much.
I think that was quite but so I think it's about from what I'm hearing, Adi. Sorry, I'm just going to echo on what you've said as well. So matters are dealt in quicker, and they are actually dealt rather than having a long queue, like you said, for people coming in for short little, or matters that they can deal with online or on the phone. And I think I can see that people are becoming more aware of the options that are available to them at our council, which is quite good that residents are aware of these options, because before people would just have a very traditional thought to the council and they will just deal with my matter. But with the changes in our society, and we can see there are residents are making use of such facilities. Thank you so much for that, and that was my point of view, and I really do appreciate that. Are there any other councillors that wish to ask questions, or is it time where we could? Okay, is that a lot? So there's Councillor Elif Erbil who wants to ask a question. I'm just getting the final questions, and then we could wrap this item up. Okay. I don't think there's anyone else indicated. Councillor Elif Erbil.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Yes.
Hi. Perfect. It's not so much of a question. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Faye and Lee and Ade for such a valid inputs there.
Councillor, you've just froze for a little bit.
We don't see on the one-to-one basis but we hear from the residents. So it's very good to know and reassuring for our residents that they can come into the council as well as be connected via the digital system. Can you?
Okay. Yes, I think we have understood the general point. I think there was a
I'm
little
so
bit of,
sorry.
I think there's a connection issue there, but yeah, I think that was understood by officers on. I think that's a, you know.
Thank you, Councillor. We
There was
appreciate
a
that.
little bit of connection issue. Thank you. Sorry, the connection is so poor
Okay.
today.
It's okay. We
Thank
did
you so
understand in
much.
general. We did understand. I think
Perfect.
officers did as well.
All right.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
thank
Councillor
you,
Fairbill.
officers. Thank you. Thank you,
So,
Chair.
So if members don't have any other questions, I would like to thank the officers for being present and for their time this evening. I understand it has been quite a long evening, and I really do apologise once again for that. And I want to once again, I have said thank you, but I just want to thank on behalf of the committee that we are, we are really, we do really appreciate your support and help and the initiatives that you provide to our residents, and it is very appreciated, so that should be noted. I think that will be the end of the item, and we would be receiving I think there was a query on the data. I think Councillor Giorgio or Councillor Smith, I cannot recall just yet, but if we can have that circulated after, so we can just have a set idea on the figures, and that will be it. And thank you so much once again, and you're more than welcome to leave the meeting for now. And if we do have any other queries, we can always email directly to your email addresses. And I from what I've heard today, you would be more than happy to help us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we move on to. I'd like to thank the members actually for today, and I understand the time we have kind of slipped on time, but we have heard our areas that we needed to. So just a moment. Okay, yes, I think there has been quite signaling issues on Teams as well today. We've seen from some members and officers. Okay, so dates of future meetings. The next meeting is quite an important meeting, the budget meeting in December, so 17th of December, and we do have panel meetings in between, which members would, the chairs of the panels would be taking. But we do have provisional call-in meetings, and the next provisional date is the 25th of November, and of course that's some time away, and we would be indicated if there is going to be any call-in prior to that. Other than that, that would be, if there are no other further comments, I would like
Councillor Smith got a question, Chair, because he's got his camera on, so it's confusing me.
I was just waiting to say goodbye to you all, that's all.
Oh, nice. Nice. Put mine on too.
Can I just very quickly, given that the next meeting is the budget meeting, I think one of the responsibilities of scrutiny is consultation on the budget, and that doesn't mean just the cabinet consulting us. It also means us being able to scrutinise and see how the consultation is taking place, how the cabinet and the council is consulting on its budget proposals. And I think it would be quite useful between now and then if we have a bit of a think about, I'm not suggesting by any means that we do it now, if we have a bit of a think about how we can get more people and groups involved in the council's consultation process on the budget. Because if I seem to remember the last few years, it's actually been quite limited. We haven't had much of a response, and I just think it's an opportunity for us to be a little bit more proactive in reaching out. I hate that term, reaching out. It reminds me of a Four Top song, Reach Out. For those of you who may know it, however, I'm showing my age. To just actually just try and get to see how we can actually get to people and actually get them involved and get their views on it. Maybe just a bit of a think around that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll happily put something on paper. Sorry?
You just want more drama, don't you?
I think it's
I could sing Reach Out and Touch if you like for a bit of drama, Has.
I think that has
Let's
been
move on,
noted,
shall we?
and yeah, I think because it is very important. The next meeting, the budget meeting, is one of the most important meetings, which in my eyes I see, because it's, of course, it's the budget where it affects, you know, our residents and you know, most of the services that we know of. So I think it's important that we have our, you know, just be active at that meeting and, you know, make sure that we are prepared and make sure that we are aware of you know, the build up to that meeting, as well as the ongoing, you know, meetings that we have been having, as well as the briefings that we've been having on budget. So it's quite important that we are aware and we are, you know, ready for that meeting. Okay, I think Petition.
Yes, just to mention about the budget in the Finance and Performance Scrutiny Panel, the two main items for the next meeting, which is the 5th of November, is budget. One of them is budget, and we've got two main items on the scrutiny panel on the 5th of November. One of them is budget. So, you know, and as scrutiny members, you're very welcome to, you know, join the meeting. That well, we'll be hearing about. We'll spend about 40 minutes, you know, presentation from the officers, probably cabinet member, and then questions and discussion.
I think, yeah, that's quite
Thank
useful,
you.
actually.
Good.
Thank you so much for that, Petition. I think members that are, you know, available to go, I think I'll put that in my diary, and if we can.
Yeah, and I'll send a reminder as well, actually.
Just prior to the meeting, get that circulated so we are able to attend, because I think that will be a very useful meeting before the budget meeting. Thank you
And
so
then
much.
if I might ask the secretary to actually send you the slides and things as well prior to the meeting.
The paper.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, great.
Okay,
great.
I can ensure that the secretary will send all of that out. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Claire.
you, Claire. Okay, if that's it, then we can put this meeting to an end. Thank you once again to all the members. Have a good evening, and I'll see you at panels
Thanks,
or
Susan.
whenever I can.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much,
very
everyone.
much.
Take
Thank
care.
you,
And to
Chair.
the
Thank you,
officers
everyone.
who hang on for
Thank
so
you.
Yeah,
long.
thank you, officers.
Thank you,
Thank you, guys.
officers. Really appreciate
you.
it. Thank you for all your hard work.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you, everyone. Bye.
Time for dinner now.
Bye.
Time for dinner.
You know that dinner will be going on your hips.